Can everybody hear me fine?
Yeah.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are on KFN territory. Before we get into introduction and approval of late items, I just want to comment on the incident that we had at the Bush Party on the weekend where the youths were injured. It was from what I understand, a 50 plus person gathering that put a lot of our first responders in harm's way. And I'm speaking more with the Comox Fire Department. These are volunteers that keep us all safe, who were not given vaccines to keep themselves safe. And these individuals doing this as a volunteer organization, it's unfortunate that that this was allowed to happen, this party. And we are very fortunate that our firefighters were there to protect us. But I just want you to know that the CAO and I have put a letter. We sent it to Minister Dix, and we're asking that our first responders get the vaccine promptly, not just putting in the queue for 2 weeks from now, but promptly. And we just want to show that we have the support for our first responders, and that also, BC Ambulance and the RCMP. So, yeah. Councillor Grant.
Yeah, that was a very unfortunate incident. We live near, we could hear all the sirens and all the goings on and the helicopters, and it was a little bit shocking for our town to have something like that go on. I'm wondering from the town's perspective, if there's anything we can do about these large gatherings that are happening. We see them going on in Vancouver. The Sandpits is kind of a notorious party spot, has been since I was a kid. And I just wonder if there's anything we could do as a community to stop these large gatherings, especially through the COVID time.
Yeah, and I think right now discussing it, bringing it out in the open is the first step. Making sure that people are aware of the severity of gathering in groups. It's up to parents as well to keep their children from going into these large groups and educating their kids. We're all getting COVID weary, and but we still have to hold on. We have to protect each other, and we have to protect our first responders, because something else happens, we need them to be there for us. The CIO and I have discussed also the property. It's part provincially owned, it's part privately owned. We do have no parking along there, but I think education at this time for all is about what we can do. But we'll continue moving forward if there is something more that can come up. So. All right, thanks for hearing me out here. And so we have the introduction and approval of late items. So we have an amendment of the agenda, and we need a resolution to exclude the public be added at the end of this regular council agenda.
Move.
Second.
And all in favor? All right, that's everyone, thanks. And then we'll move on to adoption of the agenda, that the agenda be adopted as amended to include a resolution to exclude the public.
Move.
Seconder?
Second.
And all in favor? That's everyone. Thank you very much. Okay, so getting into it, we have 3 delegations tonight. So folks, I'll try to keep you to 10 minutes each, because this is going to be questions afterwards. So the first one we have is the Changemakers Initiative. So I'll give you 10 minutes, and we'll have some questions after. So I'm not sure who's going to speak for the group, but please go ahead.
Awesome. So I'm going to speak first. But with us, I'm just going to introduce who we have with us present today. So there's myself, there's Vivian, and then there's Slane as well. So if everyone, hopefully Zoom, you're in the right mode, so you don't have anyone pinned, so you can see all of us speaking, and hopefully that'll work well. So as I said, my name's Tristan. My pronouns are he/him. I'm 17, and among other things, I'm the prime minister of my high school and a passionate entrepreneur. So today I'm here to talk to you about a new exciting project called the Changemakers Initiative. Myself and my team would love your help with. But first, I just want to give you a little bit of backstory to explain how this came about. So collectively, we have 50 years of experience doing awesome stuff with youth and creating amazing opportunities for young people. Now, unfortunately, along the way, we have noticed a massive gap between the number of motivated youth and the number that actually get involved. So motivated youth like myself often don't have the supports that we need to make awesome projects happen. If you ask any nonprofit in the community, and they will tell you that we need more engaged youth, and we aim to solve this problem. So the Changemakers Initiative started back in August after a community conversation we organized identified the need for a motivated youth support group, and we've been working on it ever since. Since then, 2 other separate projects have since reconfirmed what we originally found. Simply put, we are a group of motivated youth that meet weekly to learn leadership skills through the project that matter to us most. So this brings us to why we are here today. We've heard you are actively looking, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Just 1 second here. Okay, there we go. So we've heard that you are actively looking for someone to do some youth engagement in Comox, and we want to apply for that contract. This is exactly the kind of work that we are hoping to do. We believe that youth engagement is done best by youth. Through engaging youth in the process of doing community planning, it allows us a unique opportunity. Not only will we get a better perspective involving youth from the get-go, but it will also allow us to start funding our project and provide an invaluable experience to several young people. So now I want to pass the virtual microphone over to one of our other delegates, Lane, to tell you more about why we believe we are a great fit for this project.
Okay, hi, my name is Lane. I'm 14 years old. I use they, them pronouns, and I live in Comox. So as Tristan mentioned, there's a large gap between youth who actually want to participate in activities and get involved and those who do. So we found that actually putting youth into leadership positions narrows that gap and not only engages the youth leader, but makes everyone else so much more interested. And so what else do we offer? You know, we offer a unique and valid experience that you get just by having youth teach youth that just adults might not have. I know that a lot of us in our group have a lot of diverse ideas. I know that we've talked about dance and robotics and like debate club like that. And so we work to try and put these projects into motion in the Comox Valley. Part of our motive behind this is that a lot of us want to get jobs, scholarships, you know, go to university, and this would help us. But by putting these programs into motion, we'd also help other youth, therefore helping Comox as a whole. And thank you for your time. I'm going to pass that microphone back on to Tristan.
Awesome. So I know what you're probably thinking. Youth aren't exactly known for being the best professionals. So this is where our amazing team of adult leaders comes in. So once again, I'm going to pass off our virtual mic over to Vivian.
Hi, my name is Vivian Vaillant, and I would be, in this case, the professional kind of side of the equation. So we're kind of flipping things. Apart from what I'm saying right now, I've had very little input into what Lane and Tristan have said. And there is a document that they've created. And again, there's a part that I focus on. So there's a marriage of 2 worlds going on here. I do business development and process and community engagement for a living. And I'm good at it. And I know how to write reports, and I know how to write surveys, and I know how to do these things. But it turns out there's this really tricky thing that happens when we're discussing things with youth, which is things that work when I'm trying to engage with adults. It actually does work better when the youth do it. So instead of me doing a contract or doing a bid and saying, right, you're just going to pay me as a professional company and I'm going to come in and engage youth, instead I would be in a role of guide, part receptionist, and part coach for the youth to come up with their own ideas and then do it in a way that's still professional and still gives you the kind of report that you need to be accountable to the taxpayers. So you kind of can't do both. You can't do it the way we used to do it and be innovative and do it new. And so this would be an opportunity for us to do something just a little bit different with the money. I would still have a paid role in this, but my role would be more to guide the youth through their own process and giving them an opportunity to do something that's really bragworthy for their future portfolios that they're trying to build to move forward. And I think that that's all I have to say. Tristan, do you want to take back over?
Absolutely. So thank you, Vivian. So that kind of brings us to the end of what we have to say today before we go straight to Q&A, but we actually have some questions for you, Council. So obviously you might need time to think about this. You don't have to just answer straight away, but if somebody could tell us what the timeline for this project is going to look like, whether or not you're looking to engage the Comox youth or the whole kind of Comox Valley youth, like how you're drawing that distinction, whether or not you're looking to build programs, infrastructure, or some combination of both, how the youth age bracket is defined, and then most importantly, what it would take for you to consider our application. And that kind of wraps up our delegate portion, so we can open that up to Q&A. I just want to note that we do have those questions and the kind of key points of what we had to say today in a document which should have been emailed to the town of Comox. It was a little last minute, but hopefully you guys have that there. So no pressure if you're not scribbling down what I'm saying, but I think we should open it up to Q&A at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Tristan. Yeah, I'm just told that we did receive it just prior to the meeting, and so it hasn't been distributed to the group yet. So you know, we can take time and respond to your questions there in a little more fulsome way. You know, we're committed to youth. For this instance, we're looking at the youth in Comox, and we're just trying to see what would be best to suit them. Are you folks in Comox, or where are you located? Are you school students here in Comox?
I would say 50% of the students that we meet with on a regular basis are in Comox. There are some others, like Tristan lives in Courtner, but he did run the Mexi Pop stand in the marina last year. So
that's where I met him.
yeah,
before.
so we've actually,
yes.
This is Tristan's second time being in a delegation. And as you can see, he's much smoother this time. So what we see is that when youth are given these opportunities to step up, they kind of need to dance on an adult's shoes first. And so I don't want to limit my club to just Comox, but we could engage just with Highland or Comox youth for the purpose of the exercise. And as far as expanding the information. So there's two kinds of youth. There's the youth leaders that would be doing the actual engaging, and then the pot of youth that you want engaged with.
Right. Yeah, and I do remember Tristan from selling the Mexi Pops as well as the last delegation, and he's a very impressive young man. So I'll open the floor up to council if they have any questions. Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, thanks for your delegation and your presentation. And my question is, so, you know, you guys are meeting ongoing. What, just off the top of your head, what do the youth of the Comox Valley need? You know, if you could, in 30 seconds, say we're missing this, this, and this.
Well, to be honest with you, if I could tell you in 30 seconds what the youth need, then I probably would be handing that to you as our report. So unfortunately, being a youth, I can say that young people are pretty scattered in terms of what we want. And I think if we knew exactly what we needed, then we would be knocking on your door and asking for it. So that's kind of what we're hoping to find out. That being said, I think in the times of COVID, I'll put in the caveat that I can only really speak for myself because we haven't done the engagement yet. But I think all of us are really looking for pretty much anything more to do. I know a lot of young people are struggling to kind of find the connection that they found through things that have since been shut down that they did. And unfortunately, I think that's why we're seeing people do really stupid things like that island party. Like, so I really hope that there's some way that we can kind of create ways to engage youth that isn't destructive with COVID and all that.
Thank you.
Does that kind of answer your question? I realize it's not what you're looking for, but
I think you're going to be an excellent politician someday.
Thank you.
Councillor Minions.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Lane, Tristan, and Vivian. I'm not sure the direction that council as a group will decide to go on, but I just want to thank you for showing your engagement and your participation with the Comox Council and coming out and presenting a new and innovative way that we could look at that. So thanks for coming and presenting regardless, and great presentation.
Do we have any other questions of the group? I have one last one. So the Change Makers Initiative, this is just a local group, or is this a chapter of other groups throughout the province, maybe?
Do you want to go ahead, Tristan, and try to explain what's happening?
We're both
quite a story.
eager to speak to this. So the Change Makers Initiative, it's just like a working name we've created for a local group. So at this point in time, it's only a local initiative. Yeah, I don't know if Vivian wants to add anything to that.
Well, I think what sort of happened, and there is like a full document we can share with you. And we don't know what we are yet. We just know that we have this idea, and that I see all the time youth come up with these amazing ideas, and then they fizzle. And they fizzle because they don't have, like, they have soccer coaches and they have football coaches, and that's how they meet for practices and go and they play the games and they get through a whole season. And when it comes to our like high achieving youth, like the Tristans and Lanes of the world, they come up with something fantastic. Like, you know, one student wants to go and do an environmental workshop, but she runs into so many barriers that she doesn't, and then something comes up and I've got to do dance. And so what I aim to do is bring them together once, even if they're working on different projects, if they come together once a week, they have a place to set their goals, like an accountability club. Adults use these things all the time. And so we've just started doing it. We don't know if we should be a not-for-profit. We don't know if we should be partnering with something else going on. But what I am trying to model to them is, if you say it out loud, what your vision is, enough, eventually people will get on board and it'll happen. So field of dreams kind of thing. We're trying to build it and see what comes.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And, you know, we're not at a point tonight to make any decisions on where we're going with this. So I do appreciate you taking the time and speaking to us. And we'll be talking to you in the future. I'm sure we'll be talking to Tristan in the future somewhere. Yeah.
And I was just going to say, we should have our contact info on that document. So please feel free to reach out. I know it's kind of a big decision. Like, we weren't expecting you to give us an answer on the spot.
Right.
So if you have any more information you need, would love to hear it. So just reach out there.
You bet.
Thank you all
very
so
much.
much.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we have is Chris Gage and Company regarding 1200 Military Road. This is the 2-lot subdivision. So Chris, who's going to be the main speaker there? And you're muted. And still muted. Can somebody speak on Chris' behalf? Might be on our end, Samba. Chris, can you unmute?
There. How's that?
Yeah, good.
Hear me loud and clear?
Gotcha.
Okay, yeah, I'll be speaking tonight first. First of all, I'd like to thank staff and council for allowing us to appear as a delegation tonight. I'm a partner of 434438 BCLTD, which is the owner of 1200 Military Road. Along with us tonight, I have 2 other representatives. There'll be Clay Vanis from Jones Development and Scott Lewis, who is their civil engineer. So I'd like to proceed. We're here tonight to request the cooperation and assistance of the town in facilitating the subdivision and development of our property by fast tracking a 2-lot subdivision prior to conforming with stormwater bylaws, which have not yet been implemented. The approval of the subdivision would be secured by a no-build covenant registered under Section 219 of the Land Title Act, and conformance to applicable bylaws when created would be met during the development permit process. We appreciate that this request is unusual, and I will outline the basis of our request. The property, which is approximately 24 acres, was acquired by our company nearly 30 years ago, and we are obligated to sell 6 acres, which is adjacent to the Comox Valley Airport, to RS&D Contracting. We have been approached by an agent for a global logistics company that wishes to acquire the remainder of the property. We have agreed upon terms and understand that while locating in Comox is their desire, if the timeline cannot be met, they will pursue alternate parcels in other communities. Their plans are to build a 27,000 square foot package sorting distribution facility, which would provide roughly 30 new full-time jobs. We are sure council would prefer these jobs and the tax revenue to be in the town of Comox as opposed to this development and jobs going to another community. This has the opportunity to have a substantial economic impact for Comox. The challenge is that the purchaser, to commit to this site, they need to know the development and building permits would be issued by the fall of 2021 and that the business can be fully operational by the fall of 2022. We need the town's support of this subdivision proposal and dedication of staff resources to meet the timeline required. We will commit to assisting the town with costs of outsourcing any of the review functions that may be required to augment the town's own resources. We are happy to answer questions along with Clay Vanis of Jones Development, representing the purchasers of our property, and their civil engineer, Scott Lewis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I see Councillor Bissinger's hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the intro, Chris, there. I guess a question for you, like I bike that area quite often, and I've noticed, you know, along the road, there's a nice buffer of trees, and it seems like the entire perimeter of that 24-acre lot, I think it's 24 acres anyway, the whole lot seems to be sort of surrounded by trees, which kind of creates that nice buffer between, you know, what could be a pretty bulky box store looking facility. Like a sorting facility is probably just a big rectangle box. So is there, and maybe the questions for Miss, you know, Clay Venice or Scott Lewis, but would there be, you know, possibility of maintaining that whole perimeter of vegetation, trees, whatever it is, like understanding, of course, there'd have to be sort of an entrance, like a driveway or an entrance to the facility, but maintaining that perimeter to create, you know, that privacy, but also just keeping, you know, the trees that have grown there over the past 25 plus years. Because it seems like the property itself lends itself well, like the inside part of the property is basically just like, you know, grass and brush and broom or whatever it may be. So there's not much vegetation to be lost there. So, so for whoever the question might be. Thanks.
Well, I can answer part of that. I think some of it will be retained because it'll be in a probably a wetland, the reciprocal area, which will have to be left anyways. And I can't speak for the developer or the civil engineer on their design or on what's going to be required by the towns.
Thank you. So I guess maybe just a follow up to the planner through the CAO, is that something that we could put as a requirement for the permit or something of the sort?
They're in 2 development permit areas, riparian areas protection, and there's also a form and character. So it would have to, any requirements would be have to be as per those guidelines in those 2 DPAs.
So do you think that requiring that visual buffer could be included?
I don't know without reading the DPAs and reviewing it.
So that appears it's up in the air at this point without getting into it a little deeper.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have flexibility on the site, correct, to accommodate that request?
Yeah, and we've actually, I'm Scott Lewis, the Apple Martin Consultants, and we're a civil engineering company that's going to be fronting this development from the development permit point of view. We have a team of 10 consultants who's going to be working in regards to the development permit application, and that team involves arborists, landscape architects, and as we go through the development permit, we'll be looking at options because we have a fairly stringent stormwater requirement, as you guys are already aware of, and we'll be working with that team to try to retain as much vegetation as possible, because the more vegetation we can retain on the site, it helps with the stormwater from a pre and post development point of view. So we haven't got into all of the details yet, but we have the team in place to make sure that we are meeting the requirements, and we will take into consideration retaining as many trees as possible as the layout does move forward. So.
Great, thank you very much. See Councillor Grant and then Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for coming and bringing this, Chris. I know this has been ongoing for many years. I think when you first started, you had a full head of hair when we got going on this, and it's just gone on and on forever. You know, our tax base in Comox has been way too heavily burdened by residential. Something that we have always looked at as long as I've been here is getting more industrial or light industrial going to help our tax base and to help with that job creation. I know this piece of land has been a hard one to deal with, but I'm hoping that we are nearing the end of all that. And I would really encourage our staff to get onto this and hit the timelines that work. I think you've got the right buyers for the site, and I think it really helps our community out in many ways. So I'm fully in support of what you're trying to do.
And Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm not sure who the buyers are. I guess irrespective of that. Yeah, thanks, Chris, for the presentation. I don't have as much a question as a. I'm worried about the staff's workload because we're already so far behind on our applications. It took us 12 years to get to this point in the northeast corner, and so we're already so far behind. What happens if we shovel this project in front? Who gets left behind? That's my concern. And so, you know, I'm all for development. I'm all for, you know, industrial work down there. It's a perfect area. It's well zoned for it. So I'm, you know, probably in favor of this. I'd need to know more about it, but I'm just really concerned about the workload of our planning department and who gets shuffled to the back. You know, we have a presentation tonight on 425 Stewart, and that's been in the queue for almost 2 years. So, you know, it seems to be an aggressive timeline, and I'm not sure how our department could even do that.
Well, we've offered up some extra resources if necessary to try and meet a deadline. So that's the best we can do at this point. We've been waiting a long time for this, as you know. So it's not just 12 years, it's been considerably longer.
Yeah, no, and I fully understand, but I also understand just even a moderately easy development application, as you know, Chris, takes forever, right? I mean, like you've been a developer a long time, and with my work, you know, I've noticed that it's a year and a half that you get in the queue. And even if you kind of get shuffled to the top of the pile, I'm concerned that we won't meet these deadlines. What happens if you don't meet the deadline? Does that company pull out? Or are you left holding a bag? And yeah, I'd be very concerned about overpromising on something that we couldn't deliver on, to be honest.
Yep. And this is Clay Van Nuys, Jones Development. First, I want to say Tristan and Lane did a great job. And if we're looking for PR or media relations, I think we know who to hire. So thought they did a great job. So I'm impressed. So we are a developer, preferred developer for this client that we're looking for, you know, at this site, and their timeline is, their goal is to deliver the project in 22. So we're just backtracking and looking and seeing what's realistic and trying to understand the timing and how this process would work. And that's when we discovered this, you know, subdivision process and the stormwater bylaws and so forth. So from our standpoint, we're just trying to see what's a realistic time frame and trying to give them a realistic schedule on when we'd be able to, you know, deliver the building. So, and to follow up on one comment that was made earlier regarding jobs, the projected jobs would be 18 to start with, and then in the future growth over time, it would be up to 28 to 30 jobs. So just wanted to clarify that one item. So, and if you have any other further questions, please let me know.
Yeah, Councilor McKenna.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question for Clay. Thanks for that. And are these jobs minimum wage jobs, or are they fairly, you know, are they living wage employment?
It's a combination. I don't know the exact breakdown. I usually don't have that detailed information, but if needed, I can try and obtain that for you guys.
And I assume we're not at liberty to know who the company is.
Correct. We have a confidentiality agreement
that
we've agreed to.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions from council? I guess a question for myself is, let's say we can't meet the timelines. What happens? Do you go up to Campbell River? Do you go down to Nanaimo? Do you have anybody else in the queue? Just a general question to who.
Is that a question for me or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just, you know, I kind of followed up what I said earlier, trying to get a realistic schedule that I can give to our client, and then they'll make that decision. I honestly don't know that answer. So they have a, you know, they've done their market research on all the sites, the possible locations at work. So this is the one that we are obviously exploring and hope works out. But you know, they're asking me for a schedule, so that's why I'm just trying to see what is realistic, what's the time frame, and understand the process for the town of Comox. So
Right.
then all we're doing, I'm not the one that makes that decision, but we'll just present that information to them, and then they would in turn decide what the next steps would be. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I fall in line with Councillor Grant. I think Mr. Gage has been waiting an awful long time, and we have this opportunity, and maybe there's going to be a possibility that we can work in parallel with your development as well as the other Northeast Comox portion. But we could discuss this later during our notice to motion area. So unless there's further questions from council, Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, and you know, maybe it's a question for later, but the question would be to staff, like, is this request possible?
I guess anything's possible, but I see the CAO is going to put his light on, so there he goes.
I'd echo that. Anything within reason is possible. This isn't possible without impacting some other major priority projects. It may be something that council wants to get an understanding of what other projects would be impacted by doing this. But that is probably a discussion for later on in the meeting, whether or not council would like to get a report, whether to action this right away, and have that discussion outside of the conversation with the delegation.
Okay, and just follow up, like, we spent all of our last meeting talking about not piling on extra things, and here we are entertaining a pile on. And you know, again, I'm okay to pile it on, but it just means something else is going to move, and we need to be conscious of that. As a team, something's got to go. So we have to figure out what we want to go, I guess, if we're going to make this happen. Thanks.
Yeah. I see the planner squirming over there in his chair a little bit. So, all right. Any other further questions or comments from council? All right, gentlemen. Councillor Swift. Mute.
Yeah, thank you. It's not a question, it's just a comment. I would really encourage us to find a way for this to happen. It's not every day we get this opportunity on our industrial lands, and if we can make this a go, I think it would benefit the entire community. So I'm 100% in favor of this. So let's see how we can make it happen.
Okay, thanks. And we have Councillor McGowan with their hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, it could be a very, very, very cool opportunity. My only concern is in the news in the warehouse. I would hate to see us bring in these 18 to 30 jobs and have them be minimum wage. Don't have time to take a break kind of job. So I just want to ensure that that's not the kind of place that we're heading. But it sounds like it could be a really great opportunity in other respects. So just wanted to add my concern for warehouse workers and things that have been coming up recently in that respect. Thank you. Okay.
I guess as we're going along here, more questions are popping up, but for Chris, I'm assuming you've discussed this with the Airport Commission, and how are they feeling about this? Is this something that would complement the airport?
Yes.
Are they in favor of this?
Yeah, once the subdivision would be completed, then they have an opportunity to fulfill their obligation, and then they would move on and start their development process. They might not be ready to go right away, but they know the process is going to take a while, and they're prepared to start, I believe, to get moving. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And one last time, any other questions, comments? Right. Seeing none. Yeah, we will bring this up under our notices to motion area, and we'll discuss it further and have a little bit more thoughts from staff. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. And we'll
thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks. Okay, so now we'll move on to Kelly and Brenda Clausen. This is regarding the rezoning at 1153 Terra Road. So Kelly, you have the floor, 10 minutes.
Are we live?
You are.
I want to thank the council members for the opportunity to speak with you today. I also want to thank Marvin, Regina, and Corey for helping us in this department. It's been a learning experience for us, and we appreciate their help. We purchased 1153 Terra Road 4 years ago. And if you look at page 203 in your agenda, it shows what the lot looked like pre the 6-foot galvanized fence that went up. The reason that that fence really bothered me coming home many times, it looked like an industrial lot. Unfortunately, it was full of broom and blackberry and scrub. And when it came up for sale, I jumped at the opportunity to buy it for an investment purpose, but also to clean up our neighborhood. And right away, I enlisted the help of the neighbors, and we pulled the fence down, hired contractors to clear the property, haul away all the rocks, and then we seeded it. And it's like a park now. I mow it every week, and all the neighborhood enjoys it. So this is a property that we're in the process of talking about today. It certainly was a big improvement to the neighborhood, and it makes me proud to come home. I'm a bit of a stickler for looking good when I come home. I look after the park right beside us. Every year I make sure there's no broom, no blackberries, cleaned up. And I also mow all the lawn along the military fence out there so the neighborhood can walk off the highway. So that's just kind of the person I am. Last summer, our daughter secured her old job back in town. They've been living in Ottawa for years. And it's getting to the end of her husband's military career, and they're looking to come back to Comox, where Dawn grew up, and she's been everywhere with her husband, but it's time to come home. So they started looking around for some property, pretty hard to find. Knowing that we had this large parcel, we thought, well, maybe this is something that would work for them. Of course, it's a significant size, at just about 1.8 acres, and it's fairly valuable. So we kicked it about, talked to our oldest son. He's 10 years away from retiring and wanting to come back to the valley. We said, what do you think? They said, yeah, that's not a bad idea. I know it's getting tough, but ultimately I want to end up in Comox too. So we kicked that around, and we decided, let's talk to the neighborhood and see what they think. We are having COVID-friendly meetings in driveways and in the field last summer, just trying to connect with people. They thought it was a fantastic idea at the time that we were able to help our kids, and that they thought that they would perhaps do that at the same time. So what we did was think, well, here are our kids. Our daughter's married to a man with 31 years in the military, no choice of where to live, looking for putting roots down. This is a place they want to call home. So we thought, okay. Our son, he's an 18-year military member. He started in Afghanistan. He did 2 tours there. He lived in a tent. And he's been everywhere, man. And now he's in Lafayette, and he's living in a tent. So he's putting his time in to make sure that we're secure. He's probably been gone 65% of his married life, not home. That's the position that he's taken. It's not the easiest thing to do, but he does enjoy the life. But they do want to put roots down in 10 years' time when he's got his timing. So then we'd love to have him home. And it's we expressed these thoughts, the neighborhood, and then I thought, okay, they kind of like the idea. So we sent a letter to council, and I also contacted the planning department to get their idea. Is this something that's possible? I got the feeling of support if we went ahead with a carriage house and a main house on the property. Unfortunately, because the kids have separate mortgages, they kind of require separate titles in order to build their houses. And, insurance wise and all that stuff. So when, okay, well, if we take this 75,000 square foot lot or 1.8 acres and cut it in half, they can afford to buy each half and start their dreams. Of course, one son is 10 years away. The daughter's in town now and she wants to get going, but we have to get through this process. So we looked at the impacts this property would have on our neighborhood. As you all know, it is a bare grass lot. It doesn't have any wildlife quarters. There's no environmental concerns. There's no trees. And it's just a beautiful little lot. Now there are 12 taxpayer properties, including 1153 Terra Road, that are within the 75-meter affected zone. We have 4 properties who now oppose the idea: 205 Connemara, 1153 Connemara, 250 Connemara, and 1168 Terra Road. We have 5 properties that approve this idea: 200 Connemara, 210 Connemara, 220 Connemara, 1167 Terra Road, and of course 1153 Terra Road. There are 3 other properties that declined to comment due to previous conflict in the neighborhood. And that's 230 Connemara, 240 Connemara, and 260 Connemara. Having given our word to the kids to help them purchase property, we decided we should move forward with this, knowing that there's no money being made in this deal. We just want to help our kids out and get them home close. So if we split this acre in half, they will each have 3,500 square meter lots, which is still larger than all the waterfront property around here. And we feel, and the comments from the letters of support, that it will not affect the form and character of the neighborhood. And our building permits, our building scheme will be the same as everybody else, not asking for any relaxments on any development permits. So then I think, what's in it for the town? Obviously, increased tax revenue. To pay for the services, it's probably going to be $4,000 on the bare lot, and once the house is built, probably $10,000 to $12,000 in taxes per year on the second house. We have decided that we will pay for the tunneling under Connemara Road required by the city to irrigate the 8 new trees that were planted last fall. And I know this also helps in a small way with the town's support of affordable lands. Our kids are looking after our security, which we need for Canada. We want to look after their future needs for housing and Comox. They will assist us in our age-in-place needs in the future. Comox Council has shown support for property owners to subdivide city lots to assist owners with their stay-at-home needs. I've tallied up 8 expressions of support for this proposal, and there are 8 expressions opposing this proposal. And of course, 3 properties who will not comment due to the previous conflicts. During the 3 months that the development sign has been on the property, we received no phone calls and no emails for or against these ideas. Though we may disagree on the subject with our neighbors, we're still friendly terms. We still go golfing. I don't take anything personally, and they haven't either, which has been great.
We visit with them all.
And we fully expect this to continue in the neighborhood. It's written in the OSP that it is a living, breathing document that changes with time. It's now been over 10 years since it's been written. It's never been more difficult for families to settle in the Comox Valley, and we're asking council for your support and choose the alternative recommendations laid out with the planning department report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Do we have any questions from council? Councillor McKenna.
Thanks. Thanks, Kelly, for your agenda item and for your presentation. And, I think just speaking for myself, I'm going to be in favor of this, but, it is a dissenting neighborhood. There's been lots of stuff going on up there, and it's been tough for our planning department on this neighborhood as well, way, way back. when it was first zoned. And I guess your alternative, you could sell that property to the Hells Angels Motor Club and maybe see that might be a worse off result. But you live in that neighborhood too, right? Like you live right there.
I'm right across the street, and obviously I could probably make $150,000 if I sold it. But that's not the idea here. The idea is to have our kids back home. And God, to have your own family across the street, we can look after their dog, they can look after our dog. Like there's so many pros that it's something that we're really passionate about.
Well, I see my own daughter not able to afford Comox, a town that she loved and left and won't be able to come back to. And so I'm definitely going to be in favor of your I'll be in support of your motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bissinger, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also in support of it. I think, you know, having the opportunity to have family nearby is the greatest gift ever. Speaking from someone that has my whole family in Ottawa, so it's, you know, really hard with kids, grandparents, whatever. But I guess maybe it's a question, you know, for the planning department, but just in terms of utilities, like, is everything already there? Like, I know we approved these lots downtown because densification doesn't add more, doesn't tax more for all our underground services. I'm not familiar with, you know, Terra Road. Like, is it well and septic, or is there, you know, town water that goes there? Is there septic, or, you know, what are kind of the improvements that are required that are, you know, gonna cost more necessarily, or likely just already connect to the existing services that are already there? Thank you.
Okay, the planner will update you there.
If I recall correctly, they're on municipal water, they're on sewer. The sewer is into a pump station, which was designed originally with some extra capacity. So there's strong potential that those can handle it. The storm subdivision that will affect the storm. And probably the big thing there is it should be within capacity because it's going in a pipe over the bank and then discharging into a dissipation area. So I would say from the services point of view, in terms of your water, sewer, storm, and utilities, it should be viable.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Yeah, we will be discussing this later, so we'll get back to you, Kelly, on that. Probably.
Thank you very much for your time.
45 minutes or so, I'm guessing, ish. We'll be at that part. All right, so we'll carry on here. We have adoption of the regular council meeting minutes from Wednesday, April 7th.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right, that's carried. Public hearing meeting minutes from April 7th for adoption.
Second.
All in favor? Yeah, sorry, just for the delegations, what we're going to do is remove you from this portion. So you will be disabled, but you can go back into the YouTube channel. And I think you just go into the Town of Comox link and you'll see that. And then you'll be able to go on like the public. So that way, what it does is it cleans the screen up here. So then I can just see the councilors better because it's a little cluttered. So again, go comox.ca, you'll see the link there for agendas. Okay. So we voted on the public hearing meeting minutes. Let's vote on it again. We did? Okay, great. I've got a good memory, but it's short. Okay, so council committee meeting minutes and reports from April 14th for receipt.
Moved. Second.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. We have committee recommendations. We have two. Regarding the Marine Services Building. Number one, that designs and costs be brought back to convert the roof to a flat design with a viewing platform.
Second.
And all in favor? That's carried. Thanks. And number two, that designs and costs be brought back to convert the roof to a living roof.
Moved.
So we
Second.
move- Second. Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have the 2021 draft strategic plan from, as included in the April 14th Planning Committee meeting agenda for adoption.
Second.
Any questions on that? Councillor McKenna?
Just will we be amending this to put in the project we just heard about, or is that something that we'll just talk about later?
I think we'll talk about that a little later under the notices to motion area.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thanks. So the consent agenda. So if I can get a mover and seconder for the whole thing.
Move.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor? And now we will see if anybody has any ones that they want to pull out. So we'll go with Councillor McKenna first.
I wanted to pull out E and G.
E and
I'll
G.
second.
Okay, and so for E and G, we have a mover and a seconder, and for discussion, Councillor McKenna, go ahead.
Yeah, so I know there was some email exchanges on Dr. Grobler, not sure how to pronounce it, but was the developer, maybe to staff, was the developer within the rights to do what they did, or did they actually do what was reported that they did?
From what I understand, I read it that the developer was within the right. The doctor kind of miscommunicated with it. CAO, maybe you want to elaborate?
Yeah, from our understanding right now, we believe all trees that were removed were permissible to be removed. Part of the concern in the letter that was written was that there was a number of trees which were believed to be marked for removal, but rather those trees were marked for protection. So we do believe that the trees that were removed were permitted to be removed, and no trees not permitted to be removed have been removed.
And just a follow-up, this is the second time I've heard confusion around trees marked for removal or non-removal. Is there a universal wrap something around a tree, get rid of that tree color?
So if you're referring back to the problems we had on a previous development, there wasn't so much confusion about it as a disregard. In this case, it would have been the developer's process for how they were marking their own trees on their land. So usually you are protecting the trees, and we do have regulations around that in different permits, and it depends on what type of development it is. But in many cases, we'll require fencing to be put around a tree to ensure that it's protected.
Yeah, like, is there in our tree policy, and forgive me, I just didn't read about that part. Like, is there something in there that every developer knows that X tree is standing, and it's, you know, almost like marking your arm for surgery for the surgeon, you know, like, don't cut this one off, right?
There is. Yeah, I'll let Marvin speak to that.
Thanks.
On our standard process, we do require trees to be identified on site. So they're located and then they're tagged. So we do give developers tags to be able to tag them. And there's a process in terms of how they identify trees for what purpose. So that we did institute that in about a year and a half ago. So that identification, and so there are policies in terms of how to identify the trees so that staff, contractors can see which tree they're talking about in relation to a plan and which trees are identified for retention. In this case, staff, we did know, we followed up in terms of the concern being the future removal of the trees, and found out that those ones were flagged for retention. And that they weren't coming down. So that addressed, in our minds, the applicant's concerns, and we didn't investigate further in terms of the processes, but of course we could do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and you had G.
Yeah, I had G. So, you know, recognizing kind of the demise of seabeds will have a tremendous cultural impact on the town of Comox. It's kind of what I feel is high time we start thinking differently about promoting arts and culture in Comox. I implore everybody, if you haven't read the whole report, to read the report, and we should act accordingly as a council in our decision making. And we should start by really allocating some potential reserves when COVID dissipates and these organizations of culture and the arts are allowed to emerge from their hibernation. I think we need to do a stronger job overall as a council and as a town to protect culture and the arts. And I thought Mr. Jolicoeur's report was excellent, and it was in collaboration with a lot of organizations. And he speaks for culture and the arts very, very eloquently. And I think I was very happy to receive this report, and I think it's very important.
Okay, thanks. I see Councillor Grant has his hand.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I have no problem with the arts and culture and maybe looking at that as we wind down the Economic Development Society. There's certainly lots of opportunities. But when I read this report in the first line says the bulk of the funding of 800,000 in 2021 was from MRDT, that's just not true. And so there's a lot of issues that I see in this report. $800,000 was their entire budget, and they barely collected any, if any, MRDT last year due to COVID. So your point is well taken, but there's a lot of flaws and errors in this report. So, you know, I have trouble with this report.
Yeah, I think you're right, Councillor Grant. And if I could rebut, there may be flaws in the report, but the major flaw is that culture and the arts are underfunded, period. And I think that the intent of the report is still well spoken. And yeah, there may be flaws in there for sure, but nobody would ever know the contribution of the MRDT because it's so well hidden.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on that? So all in favor of those two, E and G? All right, carried. Thank you. So do we have anyone, Councillor McGowan?
Thanks. I was hoping to pull C and D, please.
C and D is in Delta?
D is in Delta.
Okay, C and D. Okay, so we have a seconder for that? I don't have a, well, Councillor McKenna, seconder. Okay, so for discussion, go ahead.
Thank you. I just, for C, I wanted to, I'm not on the on the hospital board. So I just wanted to hear from those who are, what the logistics are of sending specimens and samples down to Victoria rather than having, you know, the jobs and the availability to do that up here. I know many people have been personally affected by it, so I just was hoping for a little clarification and wondering if this is something that we are able to advocate to change.
Okay, Councillor Minions.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McGowan. Just speaking on behalf of what's been going on at the hospital board, it's been something that we've been advocating for probably, I would say, going on 18 months. And it was a decision that was made by VHA, and our board has sent at least 3 letters to the Minister of Health just saying we want some further clarifications and we want these contracts to be short so that it can be reviewed. But it does, because we're generally just looking at the finances and not operations, it fell under advocacy. So there was very little control over that type of operational decision. But it's something that's come up 5 or 6 times at the hospital board, and it's probably one of like the top 2 or 3 things that they're looking at. But it's seemed to fallen on deaf ears, and we don't have the information operationally, but Councillor Bissinger may have a different take on that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Minions. I was going to basically say the same thing. Like the board is focused on the infrastructure part of the hospitals and healthcare within our area here. So anything that's operations, we basically just do advocacy for. And our last meeting, we put the motion forward to have more meetings. I think it's like 3 or 4 times a year, quarterly, the board chair and vice chair to meet with VHA to go over different advocacy items, whether it be like, you know, the drug overdose issues or anything else related to infrastructure or type of operations. But we try not to get too mixed up. But they're, like Councillor Minion says, we have sent loads of letters. It's been sort of almost a recurring item on every single agenda or every other meeting. We've talked about the lab issue. So it is being looked at and advocated for.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's exactly what I was hoping to know.
Okay, so any other comments on that?
Should I move on to D?
Yeah, so let's just vote on that one we'll do them individually. So all in favor of that? Okay, and then now D, the
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else saw the complete decimation of the Sioux wolf pack recently. They were completely killed off. Somebody went in, set a trap, and shot them all one by one for fun. It seems. So I'm hoping to put a motion forward to support the motion in this letter and send that out in advocacy if possible, if there's support for it.
okay, so do I have any questions or comments for Councillor McGowan on this? I don't see any. So as far as notice to motion, would we put a notice to motion out for that, or?
So that's kind of up to council how you want to approach these. You could take a look at what you have in this letter and say, okay, council would be reasonably prepared to debate and make a motion on what you have based on this letter, or you can say, no, we wouldn't be prepared and you'd like to see a notice of motion. It would really come down to what council's comfortability is. I haven't seen this council come to a final conclusion on how you want to deal with motions coming out of correspondence. So I'd really just have to leave it to the group on what your comfort level is.
So how does council feel the letter that we have, just tweaking it to come from Comox? Are we in favor of that? Councillor Bissinger, sorry, you had your hand up before I started.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I guess I just struggle with it because like I'm not a conservation officer and I feel like it's up to, there's a big picture of predators and prey or whatnot. And I would not feel comfortable making a motion or supporting a motion to write such a letter because I think I'm not the expert in that. And I think, conservation officers definitely have a hard job on the island, but from what I've heard, like, I don't know if they're the ones that are educated and know the best practices.
Right. Okay. Any other comments? Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, so just for clarity, is the spirit of the motion going to be asking for a moratorium on the recreational hunting of wolves until a scientific study has been completed? Is that? Because I'm like Councillor Bissinger, I have no idea with these big preys or whatever, the large animals. I don't know if they need to be culled. Like, I don't know.
And I'm the same as you.
Yeah, no, from what.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so why don't I bring back some information and a motion, because they've been living peacefully and keeping and in coexistence happily with the rest of the animals there. So what I can do is I can get some information together and a motion and bring that up to a future meeting, if you like.
Okay, thanks. Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, and that sounds good, Councillor McGowan. I know they may have been living peacefully, but the ones in Tofino aren't. They're taking dogs off the beach. And so I just like more information before we have a motion on anything.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of agreement around the table. Councillor Grant, did you have anything to say?
Yeah, I think some more information is good, but this to me is clearly a provincial issue.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't really fit within our guidelines. I guess maybe we could send I don't know what we could do, but really it's not something that we have no expertise. I don't even know where we'd get any from. So, I just don't think it's our bailiwick.
Right. Okay. So seeing no further hands up. So all in favor of just this discussion that we had, no motions or anything, no letters. So, all right. Good. Thank you. So any councillors have any other items they would like to pull out? Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you. Unfinished business. This is the strategic planning and action items report for April 21st for receipt and file.
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. This is the rezoning application RZ 19-9, the development variance permit DVP 19-9 at 425 Stewart Street. We have a recommendation, and then we have two alternative recommendations. So what pleases council?
So I can't find it on here, but I would move for the one that we don't charge them for sidewalks in this case.
I think that's alternate recommendation two.
That's the one I'll move.
Second.
I'll second that one.
Second.
Okay, well, we got a lot of seconders there, so I think we even got a thirder there. Yeah, so any comments, questions on that? Councillor Bissinger?
Yeah, thank you. I guess, one thing I was thinking, like I see this and I'm like, oh, I feel gross about the applicant that we just approved on Birch, but I understand it's a different situation, different road, whatever. So going forward, are we going to do the sidewalks like case by case, or are we doing, sort of like, I think it was Don Jacques that suggested, taking an amenity contribution of a certain defined amount for a future pot of something. Like, is that, like, I know at some point we talked about maybe staff. I know it's another project to look at and maybe there's no urgency on it. But just what's the plan going forward for these typical subdivisions? Is it case by case, or are we coming up with a blanket way forward?
Yeah. And I think this is a difficult one that we don't know if we have the mechanism to do that, but maybe I'll let the CAO or the planner talk to that. That was regarding putting the money in. Okay.
So we can't take cash contributions and just apply them to other areas or other projects. So we have to take cash contributions and use them toward what we do. As far as whether or not the projects, or whether or not we would be seeking these amenity contributions, in an ideal world, the town would have a full plan of where all of our future infrastructure is going to go. So when an application comes in, it would be really easy to take a look, and yes, this is within, it's either within or outside of an infrastructure plan. In reality, as the neighborhoods continue to develop and we notice different pedestrian pathways and needs in the community, we're going to come up against these type of decisions where council has an opportunity to get those cash or amenity contributions at the time for items that are emerging needs, may not be current needs, but can maybe be seen as emergent needs or projected needs. And in this case, we've seen increases in foot traffic as people are trying to access the downtown, either through the Cottonwood Greenway or other areas of town. And that's when, or why staff has brought this recommendation to you, is that the foot traffic along that road has increased. We see it as an emerging need. The foot traffic on the road is quite high, which would justify a sidewalk. The vehicle traffic on the road is still low, which would maybe indicate not justifying a sidewalk. And so that's where it really comes to council to make that decision, whether or not a sidewalk would be justified. You can see in the report that we've put estimated costs for the construction of the sidewalk. So I think really the way to look at this is you look at the cost of the construction of the sidewalk along that road. And if you say, well, I see myself wanting to construct a sidewalk there for this cost sometime in the relative future, it would be a good idea to get the cash contribution from the homeowner. If you take a look at the cost of the sidewalk and the need, and kind of take a look at that and say, I don't see myself ever voting for a sidewalk in at this for this price in this area, then I would pass on the need to require it from the homeowner. Okay, thank you. Councillor Grant.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess I fall into the latter category where, I wrote my notes and said I wouldn't be alive by the time they put a sidewalk down either of those two streets, and I don't think we ever will. I don't mind when we do a subdivision taking a contribution towards sidewalks or whatever it may be. I just think that this is really too onerous. And I also think that doing it on a case-by-case basis is probably not a great way to do it. I think we need a standardized approach so everybody knows what's going to happen to them. And if it's, $5,000, $10,000 that we put towards whatever, I mean, I guess my question would be, could we take a partial contribution towards a sidewalk in this? I'm not thinking of this particular one because I think I'm pretty good with not charging him. But in future, if you could have a standardized amount that everybody gets a $10,000 fee or a 5,000 or whatever it is. I think that would be the fair way to go.
Okay, to staff, is that a possibility that we could set that up?
If council takes, at time of subdivision, the only ability council has is to require construction. So it gets tied to the infrastructure on that subdivision. The council, so that's your right in terms of to require. Council has the ability in relation to that specific right to say, well, in waiving or reducing, providing a variance on that, we will take bonding for X number of dollars. But again, it's as it relates to that specific property being subdivided, right?
And sorry, just to add on to that, as it relates to that specific piece of infrastructure for which you're looking to get the contribution for. So you can't just increase the fees in order to pay for a project somewhere else. You have to collect the fees in order to do that infrastructure project on that property at some point in time.
So in theory, it was a good idea, but in practicality, it might be a little difficult. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Swift and then Bissinger.
Well, I'm just wondering, how long is some point in time?
There's no, Marvin can correct me, but there's no set point in time. There's no specific period of time in which it would need to be constructed. The municipality needs to have or desire a plan to do the construction.
So if we suddenly wanted a sidewalk there, we could have asked this applicant to contribute, let's say $5,000, and it could be sitting there. Is that correct? For use for a sidewalk in the future there?
That's correct. Marvin, do you have any indication if there's a timeline, that time period that lapses in which funds would go back to the homeowner or applicant?
No, there is no lapse. I think the simplest way to look at this is in the report. It identifies that if it's not, it's going to be if the neighborhood demands that sidewalk. So it's the pedestrians and it's the residents there. So that if we have to go in and build. Oh, sorry. So if we have to go in and build this, we have the road dedication right now. So if we have to go in and build from the Stewart Greenway, the one right beside the golf course, right, where you come out.
Yeah.
If we have to build from there up to Dogwood, you're looking at a capital project that you're funding of approximately $176,000. Any monies that you get as development occurs, you can go to offset what you're going to have to raise from other means. So it's very much, the situation is if you don't get it at time of development, if you ever want to provide it or the public wants it, you're going to have to find alternate means to fund it. The most common way then is it becomes a capital project on the books. Right? So that's, and we've had those discussions in terms of what's come up in the past, in terms of the neighborhood. I don't see the neighborhoods necessarily changing. So that sort of gives you an idea of where that demand and that then questioning of safety, because that's really what comes up in those neighborhoods. It doesn't become a thing of, I can't walk down my street. It becomes a thing of, it's not safe for me to walk down that street.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bissinger.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess just looking at we have the DCC costs, and then we have the servicing bylaw or whatever it is. So basically, the homeowner, upon subdivision or after subdivision, they'll pay $2,000 to get the water put in by the town. They'll pay $2,000 to get the sewer, so on and so forth. So could we not just increase those specific rates and have just a line item for subdivided lots? Or lots that are formed following a subdivision, and then we're just, we're embedding $5,000 in total that goes back towards a public works fund, and therefore gets put into whatever future project. So we're basically just like taking $5,000 per subdivision, and then it gets charged, I guess, when the lot is subdivided and there's actually like utilities going to it, so it's ready for, you know, another house, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes. So we currently do have a road DCC, so that would be part of your road DCCs. DCCs are limited to only addressing those works that are as a result of new development. So the question that you become is and then you have to identify what projects you're constructing in the next 5-year period, very much like our road upgrades, right? Like the traffic circles and items like that. So that would be the challenge in terms of where you can actually construct and when in your 5-year plan or 10-year plan it is to construct those. The problem is going to be that in a lot of cases, you're not going to get sufficient funds to pay for it totally out of DCCs. So again, that starts to create an expectation that the sidewalk will be there. Development occurs at a slow pace. Then that expectation may remain. And the only alternative then is to fund it through generally by an increase in terms of municipal funds.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions for staff or comments? Councillor Minions?
Yeah, just a really quick question. I'm thinking that Councillor Grant's idea, well, good, is probably not feasible, but before it's completely thrown out from like a finance department perspective, is it actually that challenging to have kind of a $10,000 and all the addresses written out, or is that something that would be pretty easy within a software system to manage?
So collecting the funds in relation to an infrastructure project and putting into the reserve is not that challenging. In fact, that's the recommendation that staff has put in front. What council is more talking about would be, I guess, reducing the cost of that amount. So I don't see that being a major issue, but what I understood the idea to be would be on every development, regardless of the infrastructure that's going to be required, there's just an amount that gets paid into a larger pot that could then go into infrastructure in a different place, and that's not what's possible.
Yeah, so my question would be that if it was just as Councillor Grant said, and it was a $10,000 fee per address, so just as that idea was proposed, I was kind of wondering, for finance, how difficult that would be to track.
I guess that I don't think that would be a major issue because it's what we would be doing anyway.
Right.
I think where the problem with that is going to come is the property where you don't envision infrastructure being required, you would not be able to collect that $10,000. And then a property where you need $20,000 of infrastructure that's quite clear, now you've set the amount at 10, the municipality is actually going to be coming out behind in that scenario. Councillor Grant?
Yeah, so I think we're getting a little bit off track. My intent here was to pass this and allow them to move along with this and perhaps get staff to bring us back some ideas and notions as to how we might be able to standardize this a little bit better. You know, we're kind of throwing some questions out and getting partial answers here. And, you know, I liked your question because that's kind of where I was going, but I don't think we're here to debate that right now. So I would say vote on this and let them get staff to put some ideas how we could standardize this process.
Okay, so we have the alternative recommendation 2, but CAO?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna to bring the conversation back into focus, and this really comes down to whether or not council sees yourself constructing a sidewalk along one or both of those roads in the future. If you do, here's an opportunity to decrease the capital cost. If you don't, then you wouldn't need to collect the funds.
Okay, thank you. So having heard that, any further questions? So we're at alternative recommendation number 2. We have a mover and seconder. All in favor? Okay, it's carried. Thank you very much. So we will move to C, notice of motion from April 7th from Councillor Bissinger. This is regarding Point Homes area traffic calming. The motion was that staff action speed bumps, speed reduction, and traffic calming measures in the Point Homes area from the Cape Plaza campground to the top of the hill at Kai Bay. And Councillor Bissinger, I understand you have a little bit of last minute information you'd like to give to us.
Yeah, if you don't mind, sorry for the noise in the background here. So basically I had a chat with Tim McKinnon, who was the gentleman who provided, I think it was 1 or 2 letters about the major concerns in that area. And also following the report from the Director of Operations. Thanks, Shelley, for producing that. We kind of came to, not an agreement because, it's not for me to decide and it's not for him either, but basically he was satisfied with a proposal going forward to reduce the speed to 30 kilometers an hour, have those, like the radar speed control in a couple locations along the way, and then have increased, police presence or bylaw officer presence in the evenings. And then he would also be satisfied that, we're not installing speed bumps. So that way we're saving, the $60,000 to $120,000 that it was suggested in the report, and that those only be enacted, in the future if it kind of resorts to that as a last resort. I guess the second part of that too was Shelley Ashfield mentioned that we are going into design this year to upgrade Lazo Road. So, definitely something to consider for that design would be to have those traffic calming measures part of the design or part of the upgrades for next year. As well, putting an allowance in for bike lanes. So I don't know if I need to revise my motion or if we just vote for it as it is, vote it down and then put something forward else. But I know he sent a letter into like pretty much last minute, probably around 3 or 4 o'clock today. So sorry for the late communications. I just wanted to get in contact with the guy to make sure that we're not spending $60,000 maybe for no reason, which was also not recommended by the our head engineer. So
right.
For consideration or discussion, I'm not sure what you think, Mayor, how to proceed.
Maybe to the CAO, maybe we could just delete the speed humps/bumps portion of it and then keep the motion and then vote on it today. So that would be the speed reduction, and I think it was the flashing, that.
Yeah, so we have on page 137 of your report, there's a potential recommendation number 2, which highlights or which would have council direct us to install a dynamic radar sign, as well as includes speed mitigation in the road designs for that area. So you can move potential recommendation number 2, and I think that will encompass what it is council or what Council Bissinger was looking for.
Oh, sorry, my phone was off. Did you guys hear any of that?
Not much.
Yeah. Okay. So, what I was going to say is on page 137 of your report, you can see that there's potential recommendation number 2, which is to install the dynamic radar speed sign along the road, as well as to include speed mitigation as one of the primary focuses in designing the road. And I think that encompasses what Councillor Bissinger was looking for.
CEO, if I may, just the only thing missing there would be to actually have the speed reduction to 30 kilometers an hour as well, part of that recommendation, and I would fully support that as my motion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, and I'd second that one. So we're good with number 2 then. Yeah, number 2 with the addition of reducing the speed to 30 kilometers along the area. Right, exactly. And Councillor Swift.
I'm beginning to have some concerns around this. I think there are problems out there, as Tim McKinnon and others have expressed. But usually before we do anything, we collect our own data, and I don't believe we've done that. And in addition to that, we are going to be doing the road design. So I think that would be a good time to include the calming aspect of it. I'm wondering about the radar speed sign, simply because with the people that are speeding along there, they may enjoy having that to see how fast they're going. So I don't know if, I guess I just don't feel like I have enough information to make the really best decision at this point. I can support having a speed sign of 30 kilometers an hour. easily. And I wish we could get some more enforcement out there. And I don't know if there are some other things that we haven't tried yet to improve that. And then the other thing that we haven't considered is the boat launch and how that might be impacted. With the lower speed limit, it would be great. The speed humps, maybe not so much. So I guess there's a lot of things here on the table, and I'd really like I guess I have no problem with the 30-kilometer-an-hour speed sign, but I don't know if I want to do too much more at this point till we really have a good look at it and have a good staff report that makes some strong recommendations.
Okay, thanks. I see Councillor Bissinger, Grant, and then McKenna.
Yeah, I guess just to, reassure Councillor Swift, that's exactly recommendation number 2, is to reduce the speed. And then also like not do anything else, because we are going to be upgrading the road next year. So basically just integrating all those measures as part of the design that we're doing this year. So that definitely captures that. So that, that recommendation number 2 does not have speed humps in it, or speed bumps, or speed tables, or speed cushions. It doesn't have any like physical thing other than the dynamic radar speed signs and
that's
lowering.
what that's what Councillor Swift was saying she had the issue with, correct? The radar sign?
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if it would be an issue. I know it, when I see them, I slow down. But if there's already a problem out there with people speeding at night, they might enjoy seeing how fast they're going. So I don't know if it's an improvement or not.
Yeah. And sorry, Councillor Bissinger, is there anything else that you wanted to add there? I just want to.
Yeah, like Tim McKinnon did say they had a dynamic radar speed sign in that area at some point, and he said there was definitely improvements. Like he was asking for that because he said it's worked well in the past. So, I don't know if maybe some people do appreciate it to go as fast as they can, but I'm not sure.
Right. Okay, thanks. We had Grant and then McKenna.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with recommendation 2, especially since there's going to be some upgrades coming. My question is, do we have a dynamic radar sign in stock or one we could move there? Because if we do, or if we need one in the future anyway, you can always put it up, and if it turns out to be something wrong, you could always take it back down again.
Right.
So I don't really have any problem with giving that a try, and if it gives the neighbors some comfort until we can get things straightened out there. I do agree with Councillor Swift that I believe this is purely an enforcement issue.
Yes.
And I think that the way that it really needs to be dealt with is through enforcement, although we don't seem to be able to get that, on a consistent basis. But I think that's ultimately the way to do it.
That was something that the CAO clearly identified to Inspector Curvers, that this was a hot spot there. And we were told that they would continue to have that as a priority. Maybe to Shelley, do we have one of those signs? Are you aware, or can we relocate some of them?
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. We have 3 sets in town. We have the one that's fronting the fire department that we're kind of trying to leave there permanently. It's been there for a number of years. We have a second set that's in front of Aspen School on Bolt Avenue. And the third set is on Balmoral fronting Anderton Park. Yeah. And the set is along that section. The third set that we just bought was to move around. So we can move the one from the school to the Lazo area. We haven't had a radar board on Lazo, not when it was within the town of Comox. So I'm not sure if that was before the town took over. That Tim was talking about, but we can talk to him about that and see where they were and to maybe get some more information on that. We've been approached with ICBC, and we look at their program every year of any type of safety measures that we can maybe get some support from ICBC for some projects, and we're looking at purchasing 2 more speed radar boards as well. So we'll have a total of 4 sets. We're putting out our traffic tubes tomorrow or Friday, so we can kind of get a feel of what the traffic's doing out there right now. So we'll put those out for 2 weeks, and we had some, but it was further by Hutton Road, so we'll get 3 put along that foreshore, maybe by the boat launch, sort of in the middle, and then further to Hutton Road, and we can kind of see what's happening. And then we'll do another count once we put the speed radar boards, if that's council's direction, and see if that's actually having an impact. I did put that as a recommendation as item 2 to try to get something going down there that was not a huge cost, and because we're looking at the design of Lazo Road. That definitely was a concern to staff that Councillor Swift had about these young drivers that are speeding more. So internally, we discussed that we would probably maybe shut them off once it reaches like 55 or 60, and maybe just have a strobe light, or we can think of mechanisms so that they don't see it just going higher and higher. So they get to a speed that's basically speeding, but still sort of safe, and just turn it off completely. Was kind of the thoughts that we're having at a staff level. What else can I offer? I think that's all I was going to say on that. The 30, putting up the signs for the 30 kilometers per hour, we can do that, but I don't know if that's going to cause more of an issue, because now if we can't get the CMP to manage traffic that's going at 50 kilometers an hour, we're going to get that much more complaints that people are traveling, faster than a 30 kilometers. So I actually have 2 messages into the RCMP and just talking to them about just random traffic issues in the town of Comox, and Lazo Road being one of them. And I wasn't sure if the hubs were going in or where we were going with that. But I'll still like to follow up with them to see. I think we need to get their support to get the 30 kilometer per hour in there. I think it'd be nice. So hopefully we'll hear back from them next little bit and see, if we can maybe definitely work with them on that. Because if we reduce it to 30, I'm just going to think that we're going to need that much more police enforcement out there.
Okay, thanks. And I know that if they're speeding and what they're doing right now, and the speed limit's 30, the ticket's going to be a little heftier, and maybe that'll be a deterrent. But I did see. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. And after you, then Councillor McKenna. Sorry.
Yeah, just one more thing onto that. I don't know if they'd be able to. I mean, under the Motor Vehicle Act, it's 50 kilometers per hour, unless in a playground or a school zone. We as a municipality can create a bylaw to reduce the speed, but without us having the bylaw in place and putting the 30 kilometers, I don't know, how much we can push within regards to writing the tickets or not. So that's a discussion I think we need to have with the RCMP, but I think that as a municipality, you need to have a bylaw to support reducing the speed limit if it's outside a park or school.
Right. Okay, thanks. Councillor McKenna, then Swift.
Sure. Does not a recreational area also support a 30 kilometer an hour, or am I wrong?
No, the Motor Vehicle Act, and that's why I want to have those discussions with the RCMP to see if they support. Basically, it's just a playground with play equipment, or where children could gather to play. So we've been kind of thinking, I don't think a multi-use path, because that's no different than I think a sidewalk or a bike lane on any of our other lanes or our roads. So I think it's a stretch, but I definitely would like to have that discussion, I think, with the RCMP and see where they're at.
Okay. So I agree with almost everything that's been said. So, I like the idea of having the radar down there. I like the idea of no humps. I think because of the location of the area, boats, RVs, I think that would be very difficult on those kind of vehicles. I also like the idea of more study being done, but I want to echo the echo on enforcement. My question is around the military base. Those MPs, they travel back and forth to Comox a couple times a night. Do we have a relationship that we could establish with them to drive through that area and do a little enforcement for us?
I know they drive through the area because they have to, they go by the fuel farm and around, but I don't know what they have for policing. I'm sure they can if there is an illegal event going on, but I don't know if they can do radar in that. Councillor Bissinger, maybe you can.
Yeah, I think we've asked that question before, because we've had people having tickets like outside of the base area, and they got told, no, don't do that. So I think they're allowed to enforce, up to like one of the roads like Ocean Spray or whatever it is on Ryan Road, and then on Military Road. And I think that's kind of where the jurisdiction for ticketing ends, and don't quote me on that, but I'm not sure. It might be a stretch. I mean, we could probably ask them to drive. I'm sure they drive like, the tank farms on Night Road. So I don't think it's too much of a stretch, just whether or not they'd be able to do something. But if they were there and they saw something, then they could call the RCMP for enforcement or backup or whatever.
I just wonder if there's an opportunity for us to collaborate with the RCMP and the military base and just to enhance our enforcement. You know, I think we need some RCMP presence out there between 11 and 1. You know, it's just ramping up. You can hear it ramping up outside my window every night. It's just getting a little bit louder every day that it's sunny, and start to hear the big cars going by. And you know, it's dangerous. Something bad's going to happen. We need to fix it. So I'm glad we're having this discussion.
Okay, and Councillor Swift, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I did. I think my question's already been answered, but that was the idea that one letter writer had come up with posting the sign of it being a recreational area or a park. But I guess it doesn't really qualify as a park for the lowering of the speed zones, according to what Shelley's saying.
Well, if we swim in the area or something.
Yeah, I was gonna,
Good.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing. Like, can we put in a swing set or one of those like tether balls or like just something, or even like cut the swings off, but have a swing set so that kids don't actually use it for safety, but just have something there and designate it as a park. I don't know.
Thinking
like
outside the box. That's what I like. So,
water slide.
Yeah.
The non-playground.
Okay, so so looks like we had that. I have to jump back to that area. The recommendation number 2 was the one that we seem to be comfortable with. I think that's on the floor.
Did it get moved and seconded? It got sort of moved.
Yeah, so
anyway, she moved it. I'll second it.
okay, good. And any further discussion on that before we vote?
I just want to say that I think that when we get the Lazo piece straightened out, if the street racing continues, all they're going to do is go up to the top of the hill and come down Knight Road, which is not our road anymore. And that is a very nice, long, straight stretch where you can really get ripping down there.
See, that's where the MPs, they do patrol there because of the fuel farm.
So I do think that we need to, I like Pat's idea a lot of talking with the MPs. I don't think they can really do much, but at least a presence there and the province and say, what can we do about this?
Yeah.
So I think there's, I think that's just what's going to happen. And you can already see the tire marks, but fix one problem at a time, I guess.
Yeah. Councillor Minions, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably not necessary to add to the motion, but it might be good just to have the friendly amendment of what staff's saying about still looking into the 30 kilometers, but once we have the RCMP's kind of opinion on it, so still go down the route of looking at how the best way might be to do that. I don't think it's mentioned in 2.
So the motion as is would provide direction for us to put those signs up. What you're talking about would be an amendment instead to have staff investigate the installation of a 30-kilometer zone. Yeah, it would be an amendment, yeah.
Councillor McKenna?
I don't think we need an amendment. I think we should put the signs up. I mean, the challenge is in enforcement, and the enforcement is already a challenge. I think there's nothing wrong with reducing the speed, and good people will recognize it. Yeah, I don't think I'd be in favor of an amendment. I think as it stands right now, we would be putting up 30-kilometer-an-hour signs as well as erecting a radar sign.
Councillor Minions has hand up.
Sure.
Did you?
Yeah.
I saw your hand up.
That's correct, Councillor McKenna. That's based on the motion on the floor. If passed, we would put up the 30-kilometer signs plus the speed sign.
Okay, thank you.
But we were talking, so the challenge being enforcement though, which is something we want. We don't have a clear understanding on whether that is enforceable or not. So my amendment would be before putting those up, just to get that clarification from my perspective.
Yes. Myself, I say we put it up, as Councillor McKenna said, and then figure it out later. But Councillor Swift?
Just as a point of interest, I'm wondering about how many street racers we're talking about. Are we talking about half a dozen or a dozen? Or do we have any idea?
6 to 8. 6 to 8, Maureen.
6 to 8. Okay, thank you.
That's what I see roll through Comox every night at about 11 o'clock, 11:30, and it's just starting to ramp up. Sometimes as many as 10 or 12. Councillor McGowan lives right on the corner. I'm sure she hears them go by.
Okay.
Every night, regularly, all the time.
Councillor Grant?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think you're correct. We should put the signs up, and I think Shelley will just look after the enforcement piece. And if we can't enforce, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it would be great if we could, but if we can't, the signs still are a deterrent. And I'm with you, Pat. I can tell you what nights it's going to be because I hear them ripping down Guthrie Road, same time all the time. So, and I think you're probably correct. There's probably 10 or 12 max on a normal night, 5 to 8.
Yeah, I think we should be buying spike belts.
Well, if they're as expensive as those speed humps, I don't know about that.
I think
they're into the speed hump business.
There, you know, a 3-inch galvanized nail through a board works really well. You get a bunch of those on the road, that'll slow them down.
I did see our engineer Shelley's hand up, and then I saw Councillor Swift.
Yeah,
Shelley, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was just going to mention with the tubes that we're going to be putting out tomorrow or Friday, it collects volume as well as speed, so we can see. I mean, we try to leave them out for a minimum of a week, but we'll leave them out for a good 2 weeks. And then the speed radar boards also collects the speed, so we'll be able to maybe see if there's any type of pattern or how many and that type of thing. So I think it'll be good data to collect.
Shelley, are those speed cameras like they have at 17th Street Bridge? Are they hard to get? Can you get them? Is it through ICBC, the province?
I'm not sure. I don't have much experience on those. I think it's all about wiring. I don't know if they come in solar or how you can set them up, but that's definitely something I can look into as well to have the cameras. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Councillor Swift?
Just a final comment. You would think with having as few as a dozen cars being a problem, that with any level of enforcement, we could get on top of this.
Especially when everybody knows the time they're going by, the town. So I'm gonna reach out to the inspector this week and push this, because I'm hearing it as well. Those mufflers, they pierce the night.
Okay. One of the requests we've made of the owners out there, and I'll highlight that request, is if we can get license plates. If we can get the license plate numbers and have those conversations with the RCMP, because if the number is that low and it's happening all the time, and we can get the residents to get what those license plate numbers are, we can have those specific discussions with the RCMP and bring awareness to them as well. So just something, if you're speaking with them, to remind them that license plate numbers go a long, long way.
Right. Okay. So one last time, any other questions, comments on this before we vote for number 2? So seeing none, all those in favor? All right, that's carried. Thank you. So now we'll go down to the notice of motion from April 7th regarding the naming of park streets after notable citizens. This comes from Andy Merrick, whose father was a mayor, and he's just looking for a little recognition for the good work that he had done. And so with the right now that the policy preventing parks and streets be named after notable citizens be repealed, and that procedures be established to allow such naming when suitable proposals are received.
Second.
All right, so for discussion, I'll start is that, Andy Merrick has contacted us a few times. He made a passionate plea. In COVID, we all got sidetracked, and he reached out again and asked about it. He originally wanted to see if we could rename Condor Park, after his father. That's the park that's right up at the top of Rob Road. He's since said, a street would be fine too, and it seemed like an innocent request, and so that's where we're at with this. So any comments or discussions on this? Councillor Grant?
Yeah, so I don't really have any big problem with this. I know when we name our subdivisions, for example, in Marvin, if I'm wrong, tell me, but we usually pick a theme and put a theme through our streets so that you have all trees or birds or whatever it's going to be in the same place. My only issue with this is to do with procedure and how we would do it. Like if someone brings a name up that half the town hates, I mean, that's really the problem. And, you know, I look and go, well, what if we called it Gordon Campbell Way? I just so happy you fall off your streets or your seats. So, you know, how do you police that, I guess, is the problem, to make sure that you're not offending people as you do this.
Yeah, innocent question. I don't know. Councillor Swift?
Well, I think it's impossible to get everybody on board for every name. And that's why I like the policy as it stands. I think there's other ways. And I think Councillor Grant had suggested putting up a plaque, and, you know, maybe one day we'll have a new town hall and maybe that's a good spot for a plaque. But it would be really hard. You either have to go with everybody or nobody in my books. You know, how are you going to decide who's the best mayor? Or
well, me, but
yeah, well, we know that one.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean, we've been around for a while, and this is the first time this has come across the table that I'm aware of. So it's not like people are banging down the door trying to get their, you know, their great grandfather's name on a street.
No,
it's the third or fourth time I've been down this road on this kind of stuff. So it does come up periodically for sure. I know Gord had an issue with fire truck at one point and naming of, you know, doing that. And I know the rec center at one point was going to be named after somebody, and, you know, all of that. And it just became controversial.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on that? Looks like I'll be the only one in favor.
Can I speak then?
Okay, go ahead, Councillor McKenna.
I think you're too worried, Councillor Swift and Grant, about the potential blowback of naming a street after somebody who's done good work for the town of Comox. I think, you know, honestly, I don't know who Mayor Merrick was, but he seems to have done good work. And you know, I think, you know, if it's only come to us one or two times, and Councillor Grant, you've been on here 12 to 16 years, I'm not sure. If it's only been 2 or 3 times, I think we're worrying too much about how prevalent this might be and how controversial. We're always controversial. I think we just have to stop worrying about what people are going to think. And, you know, as long as it's not Hitler way, I think we're doing okay. And
yeah.
You know, so I think, Mayor, I'm in favor of this. I think a well put forward proposal, then it's at council's discretion to decide. And so there's always an opportunity to say yes or no.
Okay, I saw Councillor McGowan's hand up and then Bissinger.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of echo Pat there. I don't think that we're going to have this giant rush of people, you know, trying to name streets and parks and get everything renamed. But if there's somebody special that deserves to be honored in our town, I'm not against that at all. And I think that it would come to council and it would be council's discretion. I don't think that it's going to be a giant issue in the future either. Thank you.
Right, I agree. Councillor Bissinger?
Yeah, I also support it. That's all.
Okay, thank you. The gallery over here is giving me a hard time. Okay, so we were just saying that you know, we got a lot of agenda left, and I guess we're doing what we're supposed to do, is talk these things through. Yeah. So anyway, seeing no further questions, so all in favor of this policy being repealed? Okay, so we got 4 in favor and opposed. We got 3 opposed, so that is carried. Thank you. And duly noted, Mr. CAO. We will move along here, and we'll talk about the proclamation request of Lyme Disease Awareness Month, that we recognize May as Lyme Disease Awareness Month.
With respect, Mr. Mayor, didn't the CAO create this agenda that he's moving us along on?
Okay, so the council approved the proclamation request recognizing May as Lyme Disease Awareness Month.
Move.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Councillor Swift?
Sorry, just a comment. I know that we're not going to be changing the light bulbs to green, but one thing we might consider is the lights down at the marine buildings or cycle through a color wheel. And I don't know if they can be stopped on the green one for this month. So just a suggestion. I don't feel strongly about it one way or the other, but it might be a small way of recognizing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's an excellent suggestion. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, excellent suggestion, because there's so many times where colors represent proclamations and or colors represent, anti-bullying, etc. I have the exact same question, Councillor Swift, is if that building can be set to static. So I'll leave that with staff.
Yeah, okay.
Shelley, do you have the answer to that, or do we want to get back to council?
Yeah, I don't know offhand, but I definitely will look into that for sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so any further questions on that? All in favor of May being Lyme Disease Awareness Month? That's carried. Thank you. So we have bylaw adoptions, the Comox fees and charges bylaw 1975 be adopted.
Second.
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Opposed? Oh, you're in favor, Councillor McGowan, or opposed?
Yes, yeah, no, I'm in favor. I think my internet's pretty choppy
Yeah,
tonight.
no
so
problem.
My apologies.
No, yeah, no worries. And that the Comox Municipal Marina Fees and Regulations Bylaw 1972 be adopted.
Move. Second.
Okay, questions? Yeah,
I just had a question about, I know there's been a couple, and it's not related to the fees, so sorry for bringing it up, but there's been a couple questions about extending the dock by the boat launch. And then the second question, which I feel like we looked over it in our budget planning, but is the boat launch getting upgraded this summer?
CAO and I were talking about that, but I'll let Jordan go ahead.
We are planning to install the additional finger onto the boat launch. We're planning to do some design work this year to look at how we can rearrange the parking lot, but no changes to the boat launch this year other than adding that additional finger. And that'll be a nice staging area for those busy days. People can get out there and get their boat ready. Okay, so seeing no further hands up, all in favor? And any opposed? Okay, no, she's in favor. Thank you, so that's carried. New business, in-kind cash and other contributions from the town of Comox. So for receipt.
Receipt.
Seconder?
Second.
Okay, so I just want to say this is a whopping number that I guessed at about 175,000, and a CEO told us that we give away in kind $536,000 per year. So any discussion around this, Councillor Grant?
Yeah, just for, just to bring it into line, that's about a 6% tax increase.
Mm-hmm.
So we give away about 6% of our tax a year on this. So, when people say we don't do this or we need some more money for that, we give a lot of money out.
Yeah. Yeah, when you really peel it back, it does show that we are quite generous. So any other comments or questions on this? Councillor Bissinger?
Yeah, thank you. And I guess the question is, are we ever going to relook at that policy? I know they have to describe how they're contributing to the community for the permissive tax exemptions, but I know there's been a lot of, questions from the public, why are we giving churches a break, for example? So I don't know if that's something that we can look at some point. But yeah, I mean, when you look at it for 6%, we could have had a negative -1 tax increase this year, -1%. Although, there's other stuff too that I agree that we should keep giving, but just for future reference, if we're going to relook at the policy and who gets it and who doesn't.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions, comments on that? Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, I'll just make a comment on permissive exemptions altogether. I think there's a lot of times where, if we were saving this money and passing it on to the Comox taxpayer, maybe there'd be a potential where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. The people that are getting the tax exemption, I'm not sure I'm 100% in favor of all the exemptions that are being given out, but I am in favor of exemptions overall, because I think it really does help charities, especially charities doing great work in our community, really take care of more business and make more impact because of these exemptions. And I think you're right, Mayor, and Councillor Grant, the town of Comox is very generous, and we continue to be generous. And I say, yay, Comox, good job.
Yeah, okay. And any other comments on this? So just all in favor of receipt? All right, that's carried. Thank you. Water, sewer, and refuse fees that the Comox Water Rates and Regulations Amendment Bylaw 1973, 2021 be given first, second, and third readings.
Second.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Swift?
Thank you. I'm really pleased that staff has had a second look at these rates and has changed them from what we were offered prior. And I like that the new rates are, incentivizing metering. But my question is, do we have a budget for metering? I know in the past in ancient history, we set aside a certain amount that the public could call in and request a meter. And I don't know if that still exists. So I'm just wondering about that. And further, are we going to include any more information to citizens to encourage them to get a meter?
Yeah.
Sorry, so a couple areas on that. Yes, we do have budgeted money for metering included in some of our capital projects. Clive, I believe we do have money allocated as well for just the call-ins that want to have it installed, correct?
Yes, in the water fund, we have a budget for it.
Yeah, so we have the two different areas for which we fund the water metering. And the second question was, what was the second question? Sorry, you asked two.
Are we going to give out any information so that
Correct.
people could call in and request a meter?
Yeah, so the first information package that we put out was really focused on educating people who have the watering systems prior to getting to the heavy usage times, which is right now. Our plan is to develop a tool, and I think that tool is nearly complete, if not already complete, that would allow people using the information they have from the previous letter to go in and put in their water usage to see whether or not they would save money moving to the metering or not. And we believe that most residents would save money moving to metering. And so our plan is to roll that out later on in the year, along with a public information campaign, and encourage people to sign up. So when they go into 2022, they are on the proper system to save the most amount of money for their home.
I guess my question was more to flat rate users that are unmetered currently. So they haven't had information.
So I don't think that we are going to do a large information campaign, because the amount of money we have set aside to do the metering is not, it's a drop in the bucket to what needs to be spent to meter the whole community. So if we were to go out and do an overall kind of information campaign, I would expect that we would probably have a level of demand that we just couldn't meet with our budget. I think the budget to do the rest of the town, we estimate, is at about $4 million.
Yeah, correct.
Near that amount set aside.
Okay, thank you.
McKenna and then Bissinger.
Yeah, thanks. And I was glad to hear that there'll be some communication go out. There was a letter that went out in March, but it encouraged people to sign on, and it was the date of the letter was actually later than the date to sign on. So they were like, oh, which was unfortunate. But I'm glad. I hope we follow up that letter in the fall so we can encourage people to sign on. Can homeowners offer to pay for their own meter installation?
I hadn't
anticipated
that they could.
Question. I would imagine they could, Clive.
Yeah, I think it's an operational thing about just resources and getting out to put the meters in. So right now there's a plan. I think Shelley can address how they're putting the meters in, but if we start to pull them out of their normal operational plans, that could be logistically difficult. But
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I hear it's very expensive, but there's 5,000 homes in Comox, so millions of dollars. It sure sounds like an awful lot of money to put in 1 meter in a home to me, but I don't know, thank you.
Okay. Did you have anything to add there, Shelley, or?
I was just going to add that, a single family home, putting in a meter is if they already have their water service there, put in a water meter, we charge out, well, if it's being subdivided, it's $750. So just under 1,000. If somebody just wants a water meter, they can put that request in and we put them on a list. They might need to wait a few months or depending on when we're in that area. But if anybody requests a water meter, we definitely put them on a list and try to get to them whenever we can when the resources are available. The bigger cost that comes in with putting the water meters are on mostly for the multifamily. The larger meters, they've got bigger vaults. You're looking at a 6-inch if they have hydrants, private hydrants on site or sprinkling system. So that's where the cost comes in, is the larger multifamily stratas, condos, that type of thing. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And Councillor Bissinger?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking at page 188 of the agenda, and it's basically for the sanitary sewers fees or the sewer rate, Schedule A. And I know I brought it up in the past, but I'm looking at pubs, brew pubs, and beverage rooms. They're getting charged $300 a month. So that's $3,600 a year just for their sewer. And, I'm not a brewmaster of any sort. I know making beer consumes a lot of water. I'm not convinced that it creates a lot of water in the process because most of the water would be, I don't know, or maybe not. Maybe I don't know. I don't know how you make beer, I guess. But I remember chatting with Jason from Land and Sea, and he was kind of like shocked to see that number as well, because he was saying like there's no way that we produce, 60% more water than a club or a coin laundry service per month. So I guess my question is like, can this number be revised? I think it's a big burden to put on those small businesses that we so love and that have so suffered over COVID. Especially that it's not from patrons flushing the toilets, I imagine, because pubs and restaurants are only $188 per month. So I don't know if that's something, staff can look into. I know Jason had talked at some point of putting in maybe like a sanitary sewer meter at his connection to the town to actually track how much volume he's producing compared to how much water he's using. Because if you look at number 2, oh God, sorry. If you look at number 2, you should see my setup. It's pretty ghetto. If you look at number 2, it's basically your billed for sewer based on the amount of water that you consume. So I don't know if that's something staff can look into, or if we can revise that somehow. It just seems like, it's one of the highest charged sectors, I guess, in the town of Comox. So it's a lot of money for those small businesses that, might have suffered during COVID, and also just like regular, that's $3,600 a year just for sewer, not counting water, taxes, rent, hydro, internet, everything.
Okay. All right, thanks for that. Do we have any other questions, comments on this? I think staff took some notes on that. So all in favor? All right, that's carried. So number 2, that the Comox Sewer User Rates Amendment Bylaw number 1974, 2021 be given first, second, and third readings.
Move.
Second.
Okay, for discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, carried. Thank you. And number 3, that the Comox Refuse Collection Amendment Bylaw number 1985.09, 2021 be given first, second, and third readings.
Move.
Second.
Questions, comments? Councillor Swift?
I'm just curious. I noticed that Cumberland, our garbage fee is twice of what Cumberland's is. And I'm just wondering, is that to build the reserve or what's happening there?
Okay. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead if you have something to add there, Clive.
Yeah, actually, I was usually comparing with Courtney. I didn't actually take a quick look at Cumberland recently, but we're on par with the Courtney people in our utility services, in utility usage and so forth. But it's not to build necessarily the reserve. We did a very slight increase for this year over the previous year in the garbage hole area. So it's that's just sort of the trending that we require for not just paying for Mterra, but also for the tipping fees and our own and there is a little bit of our own operations in there. So it's not 100% just paying those bills. We do have a little bit of a garbage collection that happens too here. But I will have to get back to you with Cumberland, what they're doing, and just do another comparison with Courtney, Cumberland, and the other areas. I'm not aware of Cumberland's off the top of my head.
Oh, but I'm just going on the chart that's in the staff report.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, from that.
Garbage, 228 for Comox, and for Cumberland, it's 114.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to call over and see what is the difference between what they're doing in their operations versus our operations. So
Okay,
these
well,
rates, yeah.
If we're satisfied that our number is correct, that's all I really care
Yeah.
about.
Oh, yeah. It matches the cost in our budget, so we take
Okay.
our
So
cost, and
all
that's the offer. Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions, comments on this? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, thank you. And now the official community plan rezoning application, OCP RZ 20-5 development permit application DP 20-9. This is the Terra Road property. So we have a couple options here for council.
I'll move the first recommendation to be denied.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a seconder for discussion. Councilor Grant.
Yeah, so this is a tough one because I know Kelly pretty well, good guy. I think he's got a compelling story. I happen to have the unfortunate view of having been here when all of this went on in the first place. I've been through one of these before in this neighborhood where there was an ask for a subdivision which was turned down. Originally, when this happened, this encompassed all of Kai Bay Road and the whole Lazo area, and those people all came out. It was very contentious. Lazo, the people in Lazo were very stuck on their larger lot sizes, and I believe that if we were to allow this, that there could be some implications directly along Kai Bay and certainly in the Lazo area where people will come. And, you know, part of the reason when they came into town way back when was to get water, but the real appeal was that they would be able to keep their rural appeal out there. And I think that when we look at this, we start to erode that just a little bit. And I also look at the numbers of people. You know, the first time around, it was pretty unanimous. Nobody wanted that. This time, you know, I did the counts, and I see it's about a 7-3 for not to do this. Plus, well, 7-4, I guess, if you count the proponent in there as well. And I have been clear with the proponent from the beginning and the other neighborhood that I would look at what the neighborhood wanted and allow them to dictate how this went. And I think that it's pretty clear from what I'm seeing that they don't want this. Now, I know there's some other larger lots in there, and I think that what you'll see is of those that are saying go for it, the applications will start coming in for those ones as well shortly after. So, so that's why I'm going to do it. It's really based on history and based on what the people in that subdivision have actually asked for since they got there for the most part.
Okay, Councillor McKenna. And
Yeah,
then
Councillor Grant, how big's your lot that you live on?
Councillor McKenna, I did not go out and buy in a large lot subdivision on purpose because I didn't want that. So it is highly irrelevant what you're saying, although nice try.
All right. So
all right.
I have a point to that question. We're talking about subdividing to a 0.86 of an acre, right?
Yeah.
Habitat just built 10 homes on a 0.86 of an acre. And while I'm not advocating density in this area, I'm advocating that a rural subdivision inside the town limits is a paradox in 2021. In 2021, we have no housing for people. We have limited ability for kids to move back to our town. And it's ridiculous, and it's getting worse by the minute. I am definitely going to vote in favor of this because I still feel like a 0.86 acre lot in the town of Comox is a big lot, and it's definitely a big lot. And I feel at the risk of alienating people who are against the applicant in this, I feel like the applicant is well within their very, very good rights to subdivide this property. And I would advocate for a change in the OCP to do this. So I definitely will be voting in favor. And I know it's contentious up there, and it's been contentious since that subdivision was established. And it will be contentious long from now. Like the neighborhood up there is contentious anyway. Had a very long chat today with one of the residents up there. It's just not a very overall happy neighborhood. And so I think the applicant has a good application. It makes 100% sense, and I will be voting in favor.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bissinger.
Thanks. I think Councillor McKenna could not have said it better. So I'm also in favor for all the reasons that he mentioned.
Councillor Swift.
Hi, thanks. I think that we need to remember, we need to focus on not the story, but the land and what use it's going to be put to. My kids live in Comox as well, and I agree with Councillor Bissinger. It's a real gift, but they don't live across the street. There are other places they can live in the town of Comox. And it's interesting that the applicant did buy that piece of land as an investment originally. The Claddock Estates is a unique development. You know, once you go through those gates, it has a different feel. And that's what people out there have built properties and built their dream homes in many cases, and had every right to believe that that concept would remain in place. If the neighbors were all in agreement, I would agree. We could be inclined to improve the subdivision, but they're not in agreement. And I do believe that it opens the door to further subdivision requests, which would further alter the original plan. And I think having lower land prices are great for infill in areas where are in town and closer to transportation hubs and so on, which this subdivision is not. Also, a lot of thought went on the part of our planners and the public went into developing the OCP and averaging the size of the lots out there so that they could accommodate the developer's wishes, but also the public's wishes for what the whole area should look like, because it does go beyond the gates of Claddock Estates. So I agree that this request should be denied.
I'm just, Councillor, I'm going to let Councillor Minions go since you had a comment. So go ahead, Councillor Minions.
Yeah, I was going to say I've really gone back and forth on this one, but I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really impact the affordable housing. It doesn't create a solution for that issue. And so I think the OCP was done with a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money. And one day we will need to revisit it. And if more of the applicants in that area had signaled that that was of interest, it might have been a reason to amend the OCP. But I don't think densification of that one lot is really going to create a solution here for what I'd be looking for to really impact affordable. For that reason, I'd be voting against it, but say that I'd be open-minded in future without having that history.
Yeah, and I'm just going to make my comment that that I too will be voting against Councillor Grant's motion here for to deny it. I think we're going to almost 1 acre lots. It is still the country estate feel. I think that the OCP is a living document, and sometimes, you know, there are changes that have to be made. If we're going to review it in a year or two, or maybe the next term, we may come up with that this is what we could do. We have an opportunity to allow a family to come into that area. It's still going to retain the large size. I think the the area is probably going to benefit from this. It's going to still stay the same form and character. And so I'm in favor of splitting it. But Councillor Grant, and then I think I saw Bissinger. Oh, I'm going to go with Grant, and then I'm going to go with McGowan. I see a lot of hands, but
Yeah, you know, when I see a subdivision to make an 800 or to make a 1 acre lot and somehow an argument for affordable housing comes into play, you're creating a what, $600,000 to $900,000 lot. I don't see how that can even begin to be affordable for 90% of the people. I think that if you want to get onto that, you have to start looking at our regional growth strategy as the problem, and the choking off of the land supply as the problem for affordable housing. I don't see that this one or a few others of acre lots that are going to be beyond the reach of 90% of the public is going to do anything for affordable housing.
okay, thank you. Councillor McGowan.
Thanks. I've gone back and forth on this quite a bit as well, because I do understand buying into a community and, you know, wanting it to remain that way. A lot of Comox, I think, feels very similarly in that we want our small town to remain feeling that way. But I'm pretty sure I'm also the only person at the table that doesn't own a house and is aware of how hard it is to even get to the point where that is an option these days. And so the fact that there's this massive, completely unused, like 2 acre almost lot that could house 2 families in the future, and not even right now, but 1 family right now and the next one in 10 years. I really don't think that's going to impact anybody's dream home in that area. I think it's going to remain very rural feeling. And I think this is just a sign of the times. Like, yeah, 10 years ago, or when this happened, this was with a possibility, and things are rapidly changing. So I think Pat really hit it home with what he was saying, and I'm gonna vote against the denial.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Bissinger, then Swift.
Yeah, I think another thing too that I guess first of all, like, it is a serviced area, so we're not, you know, adding additional utilities to the area that's going to cost us additional money to maintain in the future. Second point is, like, if you actually look at the subdivision, one of the big lots is actually just to the south, you know, 205 Connemara. That's one of the bigger lots. They were against this proposal, so there's no doubt in my mind they would not subdivide in the way that their house is placed. I don't even know how they would subdivide. And then, you know, there's a good chunk of the houses that are actually the waterfront properties. And in my mind, if you have a waterfront property, like, there's no way in hell you're subdividing that, because they basically probably took the best view, and their houses are probably within the actual setback limits. So, you know, there's another 12 lots that cannot be subdivided. So that leaves maybe 3 or 4 lots in that neighborhood that might be, qualifying for a subdivision. So I don't necessarily see that as a risk long term. So I'll be voting against the motion, but in favor of the subdivision.
Okay, thank you. I think it was Swift, and then McKenna. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with Councillor Bissinger that there aren't very many lots that are available for subdivision, but they are the lots that really give that development its rural feel. And so if we chop them up, which I think we have every right to expect that the other owners may suggest such a thing, then it's really going to alter the feel out there. And I just don't think it's fair to, I don't know, it depends who you talk to, whether there are 7 or 8 residents that are against this. So it puts you on the slippery slope. So if these lots are subdivided and they're just under an acre, then the next lots that are subdivided is half an acre okay? It just puts you on that slippery slope of where is the line where it's not okay. So I think as I said originally, a lot of thought and energy went into developing this development in the first place. And I think given the opposition to the people that live there, I think we owe them the right. It's only fair to leave it the way it is.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions, comments on this? Councillor, oh, sorry, the CIO did have his hand up, and then we'll go to Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight one thing, and I think it's something that Councillor Swift said earlier. When you're looking and debating this and making a decision, be careful around making a decision around the story of what that land may be used for. Council is going to be making the decision of how these parcels will be structured in the long term. It may be used as being intended right now, but there's also nothing that would stop those parcels once subdivision happened from being sold the next day to private developers. It's just something to keep in mind that council does not have control over how those parcels will be used after the subdivision happens.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bissinger.
I guess just to the CEO's point, I mean, to developers, like you mean to two separate homeowners, and the use will remain a house with no coach house. Correct.
Yeah, it would follow the applicable zoning. I just hear council talking about the story around families returning and those sorts of things. And while that very well may be the intention now, and that very well may be what happens, there's also the possibility that that's not what happens and those lots get sold to other individuals, other people. So I'm just cautioning council to maybe keep in mind that how that land will be used and who it goes to is not under your control.
Correct.
And it's not to say that trying to influence which way council goes, but to maybe center the conversation around, again, how do you want that area to look? What's the density you want it to be, rather around the specific story and how this land may or may not be used by particular individuals.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other hands up? Councillor McKenna?
Yeah. So, yeah, I heard a lot of conversation around dissension of the neighbors, but I also heard the applicants say that it's about a 50-50 split. And then there's a few people that don't want to get involved because it just causes drama in the water cooler up there on Terra Road. So, you know, I hear that. You know, if I was in that subdivision, you know, to Councillor Swift's point, I know you have a friend up there as well. So I don't know how I'd feel about somebody subdividing a property there where I spent my hard-earned money to live in my retirement home, and now all of a sudden, you know, things might change. To Councillor Grant, I wasn't advocating for affordable housing on a lot like that. I was advocating for the right thing to do, which I think, you know, a 0.86 of an acre is the right, it is still to me a rural feel in the town of Comox. It's a big, big lot. You know, I think, I don't know the right answer, but if I was a resident in that subdivision and I had a great neighbor who the applicant I feel is a pretty great neighbor, and that neighbor just said, fine, I'm just going to sell it all. So he sells it all. And now you've got a really gross neighbor that just moved in and built on those lots and built something awful. And now you've got a terrible neighbor. I'd rather have the bird in hand in my subdivision, and I'd rather they would think that way. I don't know the right answer on this one. I haven't really waffled back and forth. I was pretty aligned from the beginning in my own mind that I was going to vote this way. But it's not an easy decision. But I think to Councillor Swift's point, is there a possibility, and maybe to staff, can you set like in that subdivision as you approve, or if this is approved, can it be set at a certain size lot must be maintained?
You can set that, but it would be the same type of limit that you have right now. The limit would be set, but it could be altered by future councils.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? So the motion of Councillor Swift?
Well, I guess the size is set at the moment, and this one is going to be about 1,000 square feet less, correct? I think it's at 40 something and it's going to be 35. So, you know, it kind of doesn't make sense if you set a size and then you don't honor it, especially when you already you bought in that area knowing that information. I just don't think it's fair to those people that are there already and what the potential is. And again, it's the slippery slope.
Okay. Thank you. Any other further questions on this? So the motion we have right now is that the official community plan and rezoning applications OCP RZ 20-5 and development permit application DP 20-9 be denied. So all in favor of that? 3 in favor. No, so to confirm, Councillor McKenna, your hand was not up? Your right hand was not up? No? Okay. So all opposed to that motion? Okay, so there's, how was that? We denied the denied, defeated the denied. So now we have an alternative recommendation that someone could move and second.
I'll move it.
And do we have a seconder for the alternative recommendation? Councilor McKenna.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a seconder. So for discussion that the town proceed with further processing of OCP and rezoning application RZ 20-5 and development permit application DP 20-9. Councilor Grant.
So question to the planner, is this going to require a public hearing?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
I have to say internet lag adds a little bit of drama
Yeah.
to 4-3 votes.
Yeah. So, but I did see Councilor McCowan's hand go up in favor of this. So we are clear that there was 4 in favor?
Yes, there was 4 in favor.
Yes.
Oh, and sorry, okay, and opposed? Minions, Grant, and Swift. Thanks. Okay, thank you for that. And it was a difficult one. Sorry, let me just find my spot here. All right, so we're going down to rezoning application RZ 20-4 urban agriculture. So we have, let me see, we have 2 recommendations from the CAO.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes?
Can I move for a 5-minute break?
Sure, yeah.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah. All in favor of a break?
Yay.
Just 5.
Recess? Yeah, nope, good. So we'll come back
Maureen's already gone.
at 19:31.
Thank you.
Okay, and we are still recording for the public, so mind your P's and Q's.
Keep your pants on.
Mute your mic.
Just a 1-minute warning. All right, I'd like to bring council back. We have the rezoning application RZ 20-4, urban agriculture. So we have 2 recommendations from the CAO, and then we have an alternative to the recommendation. So what would council like to do?
Move one.
Second.
Number 1, that the town of Comox create an online urban agriculture background document and conduct an online survey based on the April 21, 2021 planning report on RZ 20-4. So we have a seconder for discussion. Councillor Bissinger.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to maybe hear from, I don't know, Councillor McGowan, if you'd be comfortable speaking to this, just because you do sit on the Food Policy Council. I think, 1 and 2 in my mind makes sense to get some survey results and get some input from the community. But I was just wondering if, if it's something that's already been done through Lush Valley. I kind of read through the report and I was kind of confused from what Courtney's doing. So I think they're going right into writing the bylaws, and they've already had data from the 2017 Lush Valley report. So I'm not sure what additional input they're collecting from the public. So maybe to Councillor McGowan or even to the CAO, ref what Courtney's doing. Thank you.
Councillor McGowan, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. As far as I know, Courtney, because the Lush Valley report was pretty comprehensive, they decided to move forward with the bylaws and do some consultation as they move forward. From what our report says, it looks like we didn't have a huge consultation in Comox. Not sure how different it would be. I know we do have the entire support of Lush Valley and the Food Policy Council to make sure that whatever does happen and go forward is in line with best practices. They're there to support any questions, any needs that we have. If it would make people more comfortable to have that consultation done, then that's, I can support that. But I think from a lot of the input that we've had, it's pretty clear that people want this to happen, and that moving forward would be a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor.
I don't know if the CAO has anything else
Councillor McKenna and then CAO, did you want to add anything after McKenna speaks, or?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so McKenna and then the CAO.
Yeah, just for clarity, is Councillor Grant recommending 1 and 2, the recommendation from the CAO?
Yeah, I just did them one at a time, but that was my
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'd be in favor in that.
Yeah, so for number 1 there, so for CAO, if you wanted to add.
Yeah, so the recommendation that you have here is actually very similar to the recommendation that was made by the administration in Courtney as well, which is to go out and solicit public feedback prior to the drafting of the bylaws. And as you mentioned, the Council of Courtney decided to bypass that step and move directly into creation of the bylaws.
Okay, thank you. And any other questions or comments on number 1? Seeing none, all in favor?
Sorry, sir, I had a question.
Okay.
I guess just like what's the survey going to be about? Like, are we saying like yes or no to chickens, or how many chickens, or which areas, or kind of what's the breadth of it, and how long extra does it add to our timeline? I know, for people that want chickens, like now's the time to start incubating the eggs. How does that fit in with like, producing food and having urban farm stands this coming summer, because people are already working on their gardens and so on and so forth. So I guess, I appreciate the online survey, but we've also seen in the past that online surveys are very biased to whoever takes the time to fill them out and whoever has the best campaign to harbor support or go against it. So I know originally we were like, hey, let's just tag on to whatever Courtney's doing. So, you know, I would definitely support the alternative to the recommendation if that makes sense. And if
Well,
the rest
we're
of council,
dealing with recommendation number 1 right now. So, and as far as the survey goes, maybe CAO, you could let us know what that would entail.
Yeah, I think all the questions that Councillor Bissinger just raised there would likely be included, or most of them would be included in the online survey. What's the validity of online surveys? Great question. Don't have a great answer for you. And as far as the timeline go, it would slow us down. It would likely slow us down to what we're trying to do. Although having said that, we're going to be continuing to work with Courtney to see what it is they draft and come up with. So it's possible that we could do the online portion of this while the work is being done at the City of Courtney to draft the bylaws, and it doesn't slow our process down. But it's also possible that this would put us behind as well.
Okay, thank you. And are you comfortable with that, Councillor Bissinger?
I am, yes, I'll be voting against the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions on this, on recommendation number 1? Councillor Swift?
I guess we can already do the gardening aspect of it and the bees. So it's really just the chickens we're talking about. And I know there's a lot of people with chickens in Comox already, albeit maybe not legitimately. So I'm going to vote in favor of it. I think it is important to hear from the public because I don't care about chickens, but the first thing you hear when people say chickens is, oh, it's going to create a problem with rats. So I'd like to hear what the public has to say. And if it gets delayed for a couple of, another month or 2, then it's probably worth it.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor McGowan, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I think we have the resources that we need to make sure that we do this right. Lush Valley has a lot of information, all the information, the best practices to make sure that so that our chickens aren't attracting rats, so that we can create those bylaws so that best practices are enacted. I think that right now I don't think we need to wait for Courtney. I think we should, also maybe take initiative now and then and step forward with this kind of thing. From what I've heard from people in town, it's something that is clearly wanted. So I'm hoping that that we can move forward with this sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so we have recommendation 1 that's moved and seconded. So all in favor? 4 in favor and opposed. 3 opposed.
Then I'll move number 2.
Number 2, that the town of Comox advertise the online urban agriculture background document and survey on the town's webpage and social media pages, as well as in the newspaper. So do you have a seconder on that?
Second.
Okay, for discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? And opposed? 1 opposed, Councillor Bissinger. Okay, so that's carried. Thank you. We're now down to the extension of the Comox downtown vitalization program. So we have 4 parts to that. Number 1, that the Comox downtown revitalization tax exemption amendment bylaw 1968 be given first reading.
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments on that? Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, maybe to Councillor Grant and Swift and to yourself, Mayor, because I think you guys were all on council when this was first initiated. What was the original intent of this exemption?
Do we want to let the planner probably be a little more eloquent on this one? The intent of the revitalization program?
specifically to the permissive exemption.
Okay.
The permissive exemption, the intent was to encourage residential development in the downtown. So we have a number of parcels that are well below the maximum height. And so that was to act as an encouragement. The way that these bylaws work, it's not, the money is, for the developers, fast tracking is a big thing. In terms of what properties do they purchase, what developments do they pursue. The other aspect is that if the municipality is willing to give a tax exemption, so and essentially put up some money, then that indicates to the development community that the municipality is serious about wanting it in a certain area. And that gives them a confidence in terms of proceeding with applications, as opposed to a simple statement like just having the OCP that says that we're looking at development in this area, but there's no real indication about how much support around amongst council is in favor of it.
Thank you, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, so when we first did this, first of all, we weren't smart enough to figure this out ourselves. This is a plan that's used in many communities across British Columbia to varying different degrees and different ways. But, you know, if you go back 10 years in time when our downtown was dead as a doornail, you couldn't find anybody on our street. And we had all these underutilized properties. And so what we looked at was if you put commercial on the bottom and paid taxes on commercial, we would give you an incentive to put residential on top with the goal of densifying our downtown core and making it more vibrant. So that was the logic behind it. And where it came from really was we pretty much stole the Maple Ridge plan after we looked around at many. So there's lots of them around that are varying differences in this. I think that the only people that have ever taken us up on the actual tax exemption piece is Berwick, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think there's been any others. There may have been one other.
Balmoral.
No, to date it's been Berwick. Balmoral was the key interest there was the fast tracking.
Yeah.
But they also, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, they also received an exemption, right?
No, to receive an exemption, they would have had to build to a higher standard in terms of green building design, and they weren't interested in that. They were interested in the fast tracking.
But they did receive an exemption. Am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong.
I think you're wrong.
They got a fee.
There was a letter in the paper, I think, that
Right.
maybe, is that what you're talking about, Councillor McKenna? The
No,
letter in the
it's
paper
listed
that
in,
claims that.
it's listed in our agenda. I'll have to find it.
It's at page 281, DP and BP fee rebates. They got $34,000 back for their building permit and development permit, but no tax exemption.
It wasn't property tax exemption, Pat. It was.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So I was wrong on the property tax exemption. It was an exemption for the downtown vitalization program of 34,000.
Yeah, there's the vitalization program is made up of a number of different aspects. One is the permissive tax exemption. The other is reduction in building permit fees, and the third is a rebate on planning application fees.
Oh, okay, great. And so I guess my question, is it still relevant, this this exemption? I mean, I would think developers are, well, I don't think, I know people are knocking on the door to build. And maybe it is still a good thing that we offer an exemption to continue to have that. But, you know, Councillor Grant just said, and that's why I'm a little confused is, do they receive an exemption if they don't have retail on the bottom as well? Or was that a council variance to it?
They don't have to.
Majority of the area is zoned that they have to have retail on the bottom. So it's, and then it allows above the bottom floor either commercial or residential. So it's to encourage the residential. The one thing I would like, I think is important, I can't understate the importance of the indication of desire for downtown development that does. I mean, Comox went quite quickly from, you know, rumors around the developers, to be totally anti-development, you can't, you know, there's no support for development, to being, at that time, we were the only one in the valley that had it, to being seen as supportive of development, and that did trigger development in the downtown area.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Minions, and then Grant, did you have? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm. So we topped it up from 40,000 to 80,000. Once that 80,000 is reached, that bylaw then at that time would be basically over, and we would be relooking at this anyhow, right? So we're kind of getting closer to the end of the 80,000 funds with the 26,000 remaining, and that bylaw would then basically dissolve itself. Is that correct? Once the budget is gone?
No, so there is no ability when you create this type of a bylaw to put a cap on it. So what it is it's the bylaw is active as long as it's in place. What staff are doing is monitoring uptake. And as we get close, then we're advising, as in this report, we're saying we anticipate being able to fund one more project. There's nothing on the books that's going to break, that we currently have, that's going to break us over the 80,000. So it's a matter of monitoring it, and when you exceed it or you get close to it, bringing that up to council's attention and asking the council if they wish to allow for further exemptions or rebates or rescind the bylaws.
Okay. And is that downtown revitalization area the same as like our downtown core area that we have? Like I was thinking BIA, but it's not the BIA, but it's what we consider our downtown core, and we haven't expanded yet. So it has to be within that boundary.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I think it reaches just to Ellis Avenue. There's that old brown house that's in, and then around from there. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions, comments on that? Seeing none, so all in favor of number 1? All right, that's carried. Thank you. And number 2, that having given Comox Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Amendment Bylaw 1968 first reading, having received the April 21st, 2021 planning report on PR 21-5 and in accordance with section 226(6)B of the community charter. Good, thank you. I was waiting for that. Okay, so any questions on that? Comments? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thanks. Number 3 is moved that the downtown Comox Revitalization Tax Exemption Amendment Bylaw 1968 be given second and third readings. So seconder?
Second.
Okay, questions, comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And number 4, the Comox Planning Procedures Amendment Bylaw 1969 be given first, second, and third readings.
Move.
Second.
Questions, comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Down to F, rezoning application RZ 21-1 home occupation text amendment regarding reflexology. Number 1, that the Comox zoning amendment bylaw 1971 be given first and second readings.
Move.
Second.
Okay, questions, comments? Councillor Bissinger, then McKenna.
Yeah, thank you. I guess there was one of the, I think it was in the reading file, there's 2 business license requests that I saw got denied for home occupations. And I think one was either a nail salon or a beauty salon. And then the second one, I couldn't really decipher what it was, but I'm guessing it was sort of like a paramedical, like health type of thing. So, you know, like we're amending this for reflexology, which I have no issues against, but are we going to be amending it for other type of home occupations, like a beauty salon, which I also don't have any issues with, or whatever type of other, you know, voodoo paramedical stuff exists? Like, I don't really know. Well, I don't mean that in any disrespect. I just know that, you know, there's a lot of these different, you know, there's like hella, I don't even know what they're called. Anyway, there's a lot of these like medical type
You're making like
things
one of
that
those dolls to poke pins into my back or something, or?
no, I just mean there's a lot of these like paramedical umbrella type occupations that, you know, are we just going to be amending it for every single one that comes up, or can we just do like a blanket statement instead of just adding reflexology, but adding all of the potential studies of the human body healing that exist?
Gotcha. So we're going to pass this on to the CAO.
Yeah, so there's a couple different items to cover in here. One, so this application is in front of council because you had an applicant who paid the fee for the rezoning application come in. So that's why this specific one has made its way to council and others haven't. When we are looking at our business licensing and zoning bylaws, Comox is on the more restrictive side on what we allow within our residential homes than other communities. It's something that we've identified at the staff level and talked about how we can look at addressing this in the sense to bring it to council and have the discussions. These are very difficult discussions to have with the community, and you'll find that they attract a lot of comment from both sides on what should be allowed. You'll have the downtown businesses that are concerned that we, you know, unfair playing field advantage will be given to home-based businesses. A good example is Comox doesn't even have temporary use permits allowable for these sorts of things for council to take a look at them on one-off or temporary basis. And that is in a lot of communities. So we have been discussing this at the staff level, but given the breadth of project and the deep understanding you should have when making these recommended changes, it's something that I've left off the table until we move forward with determining what our economic development service is going to look like and likely handing that project to that person when they come in. So it's something that we identify internally probably needs to be reviewed. On the larger sense, in this specific case, it is because we've had this application come in with a person who has paid the fee in order to get it looked at. Now, we also have the ability to take a look at our business licensing and zoning bylaws and take a look at what we allow to be permissible and interpret them in more flexible manners. You know, as you mentioned, there's been a growth of this paramedical industry. So if you take a look at what was permissible originally and put down, do we see that the applications that have come in fall within that umbrella that had this been a popular or common use at the time it would have been approved? We have the ability to take a look and interpret that. So it's a balancing act that we're doing right now. And it's just kind of taking a look at things on a one-off basis until we have the opportunity to bring that update to council and you have the ability to have that conversation with the community as a whole.
Great, thank you. Okay, so yeah, any other questions or comments on that?
My question was a very similar vein. It was around homeopathic medicine, and you know, I know several doctors that are qualified doctors, but they're not allowed to practice in that setting, you know, out of their home, and in COVID, and you know, having to move out of office buildings, et cetera. So I think what I'm hearing from the CAO is that it's going to be a variance every time if somebody needs to try and qualify a new business to work out of the house.
Until we direct somebody to build on this, which could happen down the road.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Councillor Bissinger, got a voodoo doll out?
Sorry, I didn't mean that in any disrespect
Oh no,
at all. I just didn't know the term. I guess two quite. I guess actions. I know, like Councillor Wendy Moran for the City of Courtenay had made a motion that passed, and it was to explore options to expand permitted home occupations for hairdressing, dog grooming, counseling, massage, and such businesses that don't create additional noise and parking challenges. So that'd be interesting to see sort of what they've experienced or what their lessons learned are for that. And I guess the second question too, you know, like those businesses for which we denied issuing a business license, like, are we seeing those proceed anyway, but we're just not collecting the fee? Or is it like, if they were to proceed without the business license that we denied, then it would like be shut down and there'd be some severe fines?
I would say it's likely the former, where licenses are being denied we don't have any knowledge whether or not whether the businesses are carrying on. You know, most of our bylaw enforcement are complaint based, outside of, you know, parking enforcement or littering or those things where we may see them. So I don't want to act naive to council and say no when we deny a business license, they just don't do it and continue to follow the bylaws. I would expect in many cases they would be moving ahead with their business and conducting them anyway, and we would rely on complaints from the neighbors before we would go and enforce. And I would say on these issues, I don't think that we would or have taken a heavy-handed enforcement. If we needed to go and say, hey, listen, you can't do this anymore, that is already a fairly large blow to somebody who's conducting these businesses. I don't think there would be a need to hit them with large fines after that. If we had an issue getting compliance, like there's, you know, somebody who's been told you can't do this anymore, and then further complaints come in, that would be when we would go and look at the fines. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks. So we have number 1 there for us. I'm just getting back to my place here. Sorry. Yeah, so that the Comox amending bylaw be given first and second reading. So any other further questions, discussions on that? All in favor? Okay, great, thanks. And that number 2, that in accordance with section 464 of the Local Government Act, the requirement of to hold a public hearing in respect to Comox zoning amendment be waived and staff be instructed to publish the requisite notices.
Second.
Questions, comments on that? All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. Okay. And so under the notice to motion section, we didn't have anything, but this led to when the change makers came, we said that we would discuss this at the notice to motion, and just wondering some advice maybe from the CAO, how you see this moving forward.
Yeah, so on this item and then the other delegation you had from Chris Gage, they are becoming very time sensitive issues. So council is aware we had planned on the expression of interest for the recreation project was created, and we had planned on releasing it about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And so we're going to need direction, I think, from council on what you want to do here. So council has a couple options. One, you could request that staff bring back a report on what it may look like engaging with this organization. There's definitely some questions that I would have for the organization, especially where they mentioned this isn't a formal group, it's not a nonprofit yet. So who exactly the town would be contracting with is one of the first things we would need to figure out. The other option is to direct staff to go to a competitive process for which they would be able to make an application. I'll be honest with council, the criteria for hiring is likely to be around the experience that somebody has in the setting of recreation. And so this group does appear to have a lot in the community engagement section, but not so much on the recreation side. So I think they would have a very tough time, not impossible, but they may have a tough time being successful. So council can do that, or council could simply direct us to do a direct award to this group and work with them to try and complete this project. So you have a number of options in front of you. One of the things that does concern me is just the timelines that we have to get moving on this sooner rather than later, because our commitment to council is that we bring this to you by the end of the year so that you're able to make your budgetary decisions and have something constructed into next year, if possible. And part of the information we need back on that is the maintenance costs and the construction costs for whatever is recommended. So you have 3 options. You don't have to give us direction today, but if you would like to provide that direction and discuss that today, you would need to first have a debate on whether or not you wanted to discuss this at this meeting. And because it would be an on-table item, council would first need to discuss and pass a unanimous motion to deal with this at this meeting. If that motion passed, Then you would debate the motion on whether or not you wanted to perhaps, you know, which of the three options you'd like to go, and that would pass on a 4-3 regular majority vote. So just to highlight the options that council has is to deal with this at this meeting and provide direction, to wait until we get to the next meeting in May to provide direction. But that means that you would discuss it at that meeting, provide direction, and possibly get decisions at the end of May, putting us into June when we start the project. Or you could follow through on one of those three directions at this meeting, which would be to direct award to the group to move to a competitive process or to ask for a staff report. So I know that's kind of three options plus an hour later. So if you have any questions, maybe on the process, you can start with that, and then we'll move to where council wants to go.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. Do we have any comments, Councillor Bissinger?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I'm super keen to have youth involved. I guess my only concern is I don't think they know what the expression of interest entailed. So, you know, they might think it's just a youth engagement project, but I don't know if what we were asking included, you know, costing of different options, you know, what the outline of it, like, are we looking for recreation space, you know, how many people to contact or whatnot. So I don't know if like step one would be to share that expression of interest document with them and then sort of gauge their comfort level with it. Like I think it's important that youth are engaged, and I think it's cool that youth would be part of the process. So whether it's this group specifically that gets the direct award, or if it's a consultant that has 1 million years of experience, but then we add a component in there that they need to actually hire, you know, youth for X number of hours or something. I don't know if that's like a social procurement criteria or something of the sort, and whether or not that is the benefit. But that'd be, you know, I guess my first step would be, you know, as they aren't a charity or a nonprofit, or as they're not incorporated or anything, I just don't want to give a contract if we don't know what we're getting out of it, and if there's no clear direction of what we want out of it, whether or not they have the capacity and the skills to do it.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Grant?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and it's a really cool project, and I really liked what they had to say about motivating kids, because, you know, when you've got kids of that age running around, it's pretty cool to see these guys come and want to do that kind of thing. But I have the same concerns, and they asked us one question that kind of got me thinking, and they said, "You want programs or infrastructure?"
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of talked about infrastructure more than anything. And as I got thinking about that, you know, they might be okay on the program side, but the infrastructure side is kind of big. And what we would be looking for, in my opinion anyway, and I may be wrong, is something that really stands the test of time and something that really engages a whole plethora of age groups. You know, you build a playground and it's kids, you know, you build, you know, we've seen youth centers, and by the time kids are 14, they're age out of those kinds of things. And so it's, you know, we're really looking for some real expertise in where this should go. And I kind of question whether they would have that or not at this stage.
Right. Yeah, that was my feeling as well. Any other questions, comments from council? Councillor Swift?
Well, it sounds like we need to postpone this till May, till we get a little more time to think about it and maybe some more information. And I know we've talked about a pump track and perhaps something out in the ocean. And I think those are great ideas. But I'm just wondering, with Jordan's comment regarding the focus is on recreation, and Councillor McKenna's keenness to promote arts and so on. Recreation is the emphasis that we need or want. And I don't have the answer to that question. I'm just putting it out there.
Okay, thanks. And Councillor McGowan, I saw your hand up.
I was just excited. Like, I really think that having the youth involved is a very important aspect, because they're the ones that know what they want to do. I mean, us as adults, we can say what we wanted to do, and I know what I would have loved 20 years ago, but having youth involved in some kind of aspect of this, I think, is a very important part of the project.
Okay, thank you. I saw some heads nodding when Councillor Swift had said about delaying this to May. Is that something that council would like to do? So do you want a motion for that or just,
No, if council takes no action today, we'll move it to the next meeting in May.
okay,
So I
so,
move we take no action.
okay. And the seconder, so all in favor of that, we'll deal with it in May then? Yeah, Councillor Minions, go ahead.
Can we, before the May meeting, just get a copy of what the tender was going out for, just so we have a bit of parameters on the discussion beforehand?
Yeah, you can. So with this, the original document that we had created was a long RFP because what we were looking for was more expansive and more specific. And so when council made the budgetary change in the budget meetings and reduced the scope, what we did was we changed it to an expression of interest. So an expression of interest is much different than an RFP. It's not going to so much lay out the exact requirements of what the project is going to be, although there is some of the aspects of that. What the process for the expression of interest was more for us to go out and find a qualified provider for which we could work with them in order to meet the program guidelines and project guidelines that we would develop with them along the way. So the expression of interest is not going to have that detailed breakdown that the previous RFP had. It may be useful to share the original RFP so council can see what the project guidelines are going to be as we move along, because the expression of interest is going to be much more limited.
Okay, thanks. So all in favor of that, then bring it back in May. And that's carried. Thank you. And then the other part we did have was giving staff a little bit of an idea where we want to go with the Chris Gage issue. That was one of the delegations. Councillor Grant,
Yeah,
sir.
thanks. So, you know, this has been on the table for, I think, as long as I've been alive, trying to get things rolling here. And, you know, I know Chris Gage can be a little bombastic sometimes, but there's frustration behind a lot of that too. I think that we've been trying to, or at least I have thought for many years, that we need to get our industrial lands rolling and we need to get some tax base out of that. And this is a golden opportunity to do that, in my opinion, anyway. Now, what it entails from the planning side, and that's the problem, that I don't really know if those are realistic timelines. But I also know that if we get them started and we're working on it and we're putting actions together that are working towards the end result, that they'll probably be good with that. And you know, I don't think they're looking for hard and fast dates, and these things do tend to run a little bit longer, but I think this is something that's going to be really beneficial to our community, especially when they say that they'll throw some money in. Now, they didn't say how much money they throw in or what that looked like, but you know, if they're willing to help out to get this rolling, then you know, I say that we get rolling on it as soon as we can.
Great, thanks. The CAO did have a comment there.
Yeah, just wanted to mention, so this is similar to the decision that council had previously. If you want to provide direction, I think the first thing that you should do is to put the motion on the floor on whether or not you want to look at making a motion to provide direction to staff. So that first motion, because you're adding something to the agenda that's not on it, you're going to need to have unanimous consent. So the debate should really be around on this first motion, whether or not you want to get into providing direction today, and not so much a debate on what that direction will be. So the first debate, which require unanimous consent, is whether or not you want to take this up as an item at this meeting today.
So I'll make that motion, Jordan.
Oh.
Second.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
I guess we're okay, so we have two. So are we then at discussion point or just vote? No, a discussion. You can have a discussion. I'm just saying this. Yeah.
The discussion shouldn't be whether or not you want to provide direction to staff or move forward. It's more of, is this an important enough item to take up at this meeting now?
Okay, Councillor Minions.
Yeah, I just had two quick questions. So do we have a mechanism to allow individuals or businesses, corporations in the community to pay for planning to move an application forward? Like, is that actually a mechanism that can happen? And the second thing is, before we make a decision on moving forward or not, can we get the report on what would be bumped with, you know, we can say we're interested, but this is needed, and can that be done as soon as tonight? Like, requested as soon as tonight?
So if council were to pass this motion to get into what direction to provide, that would be my recommendation, would be to get a report on what is going to be affected, because this is a large ask and there's going to be major projects or priority projects that will have their timelines impacted because of it. Marvin can talk a little bit more about the type of contributions that can be made by developers for applications.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, and Councillor Grant alluded to this earlier, that even though this is a new project, Mr. Gage has been in the queue for an awful long time to get this going. And so, you know, I think that adds a little bit of weight, but you were going to have the planners say something, were you, CAO?
Yeah, just on the type of contributions developers can make to assist us in their project applications.
Yes, I know that that does occur sometimes in terms of freeing up additional resources. So it's a matter of what resource, the developer is proposing to provide, and is that resource available, and the timing of it being available. We're in the middle of construction season right now.
Mm-hmm.
It seems, I mean, I'm all for the project. It just seems controversial when, you know, if it causes where each developer will then come forward wanting to put forth their own staff. And I'm just wondering how that looks. But if it's a mechanism that's available, it's good to know. And maybe there's not that many developers that would be willing to pay for that planning staff. But if it's available, that's good to know.
Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah,
it's a valid concern.
Yeah, it is a valid concern. As far as whether or not developers would make that contributions, absolutely. We have that offer made to us fairly regularly. The difficulty is finding the type of resource that can come in and assist with the permitting and decisions that we have to make. Ultimately, you know, if we can't farm out those decisions or recommendations to somebody else, you know, if I was to come and bring council a recommendation based on a consultant that Marvin hasn't reviewed, and you made a decision on that was negatively received by the community, I don't think anybody would think that was a very good process. So the difficulty is finding the type of resources that can actually assist us in these projects. If the development community wants to get together and make a commitment to us to fund a permanent position for the next 5 years in order to help everybody get through, I'm certainly, that would be a great discussion. But these individual contributions, just logistically outside of appearances, logistically, it's very hard to use that type of offer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, Councillor McKenna, and then Bissinger.
Yeah, so I find this a very unrealistic ask. I'm excited about finding somebody to fit the zoning. A sorting facility, I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess so, right? But to me, a sorting facility is they're bathing in money right now, right? I mean, and this is either FedEx, Amazon, Purelator, somebody. So a couple of things, whether it's the business that we want or not, it's really not our choice. I understand that. It's an industry. If they meet the zoning, they meet the zoning. But I just find it unrealistic that we can push so many projects off to put one project in. I just find it hard to believe that we could even do that from a planning standpoint, even to meet their timelines. Like, even if we pushed off all the other projects, I just find it hard to believe we could do that in 4 months.
Okay, CEO, is there a way that we could work parallel with, continuing on the Northeast Comox development as well as this and still moving it forward so that we don't push everything to the side?
Yeah, so we could definitely work this in parallel with the development of the Northeast Comox bylaws. There'd be a couple different paths if council were to give this direction. We could put aside the adoption of the Northeast Comox bylaws in order to put the requirements that will be in the bylaws into development permits and restrictive covenants and all those sorts of things. Now, that is going to add quite a bit to the overall workload that we're going to have to do, because it's just extra work to get that done prior to the adoption of the bylaws. Now, if we were to simply move forward with the adoption of the bylaws as we plan to, and then treat this development or this building permit and development permit application with priority afterwards, there wouldn't be an overall increase to the amount of work that needs to be done. At that point, it's just sequencing and whether or not council finds the consequences of pushing other projects off acceptable, right? So there is a way to do this in which we're not increasing the total amount of work that needs to be done, but there's no way to do this in which we're not impacting other priority projects, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to the planner.
Just in regards to the comments of councillors so far, I think the critical point was raised by Councillor Grant and Pat. 4 months? No, I don't believe it's realistic. There were two different, to me, there were two different presentations. The actual developer themselves was looking for what can be done and what can be done to work together on it. If you're looking at 4 months, at this point, if you don't have a design already in-house, it's hard to even getting a design in for a building permit application, let alone getting one out. So I think that possibly something can be done with minimal disruption, but that would involve some exploratory talks with the actual developer and what their timelines are and how they're going to lay out their program. The other part is we have gotten, in regards to when we fast-tracked 695 Aspen, one of the complaints of the development industry, the key complaint of the development industry, is that if there are programs that the town has in terms of getting priority processing or getting approvals, that should be made public so all developers can bid on it. So that was already expressed on the last fast tracking.
So I guess to answer the question, whether or not it's doable in 4 months to have a building and development permit and subdivision out in 4 months, that's not achievable. However, the overall goal of the developer to have construction completed for an operational building in the fall of 2022, that's achievable based on my understanding of what their timelines could be. It just means that they're going to have less time on their side, and we're going to need to have more time on our side. And that's, to Marvin's point, those are the discussions we need to have with the developer should council give us the direction to move forward on this.
Okay, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, so I think that, moving forward is probably the right thing to do in this case, but I think that we need to speak to the developer. I mean, when you look at this, there's a buyer for a piece of land and they're trying to make their deal, and their end goal is to have something built for not this year, but the following year, which I think is attainable. But I think we just need to sit down and talk to that developer and say, your goal of getting out in the fall is not reasonable, but possibly early spring, and then you've got the year to build your building, or however that would go, and just lay it out for them so they know exactly what the timelines are, and then they can decide. Right. Like we're kind of sitting here trying to figure this out in our own heads without a lot of information. And I think that if we just lay out what's realistic, and, I know Chris well enough to know that he, when he says that, he probably means it today, but if it had to go past Christmas into January, I think they all just want to get that building built out, that end date. So that's my take on it.
So any other comments on this? Councillor Minions? No? Councillor McKenna and then Bissinger.
Yeah, I just feel like, and maybe it's just me, but I feel like there's a gun to our head, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I don't like it as a collaboration, and I think all we have here is a landowner who's trying to sell a property and using the town as a mediator to try and speed something up. I just don't like the optics of it. And, absolutely, Chris is a hardworking, good developer, and he's been in the queue a long, long time. And, probably there is some entitlement there that we need to help him out. But, this is somebody looking to purchase a property. And I agree with Councillor Grant. I just don't think we have enough information.
Okay, thank you. Bissinger, CAO and then Bissinger.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to maybe bring council back to this motion at the beginning, which is whether or not you want to get into the discussion to provide staff direction. And it kind of feels like this, you feel that this is definitely worth the discussion because you're having it now. So just to maybe just to pass that motion, and then that will allow you to get, that'll allow you to get to an actual motion for the direction you want to provide, and that may help provide focus on the discussion moving forward.
Are you okay holding off, Alex, and then we'll vote on this, or do you want to speak first? Because I'm going to bring it back to talk anyway. Yeah, we'll continue talking about it.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Okay. So
well, I guess, yeah.
No. If you have something to say, please go ahead.
Well, yeah, I guess just my question is, like, in terms of estimated tax revenue from said building, let's say, I can't remember what they said, 26,000 square feet, like, what do we estimate in terms of tax revenue, right? Because if we're going to push this, like, I hope it's a lot of bang for our buck. But then, I'm also looking at our strategic priorities, and, we have the Providence Dementia Village, we have housing, like, those are huge things that need to get attention from planning. So I don't want to put aside, a much needed dementia village in exchange for $20,000 of taxes additional that we're getting, you know what I mean? Just from having that industrial tax revenue. So I don't know what the, I don't know, Jordan, if you have sort of like a concept in your mind of what the estimate would be. I'm just curious in terms of like, what's the, the benefit if we were to push everything aside and go ahead with this.
Clive, are you around to maybe provide comment on that? Because I couldn't estimate.
Yeah. Just trying to get my my screen open here. Sorry about that.
Well, he's doing that. I have a question. If we were to move this forward, does this benefit the airport? Because they're a key player, because now this would allow that subdivision. So lot A, that the airport commission could potentially take over that for their expansion needs. So if we push this back, are we pushing back the opportunity for the airport too?
So with this project, the subdivision of the land would take place, which would be beneficial to the airport.
Okay.
I'm not aware of the timelines the airport is working on and whether or not doing it would push their timeline back, but certainly providing subdivision would leave the airport more flexibility to move forward with their plans as they develop them.
Okay.
So that would be part of what we would try and answer if council were to direct us to bring a report back on this item.
Okay, thanks. And Clive, sorry for interrupting. Go ahead. But you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm just going to give you the number for every $1 million of assessment, what the light industry would pay. So I'm just going to give you that number in 2 seconds. And light industry tax rate is there. So we would be collecting on property value taxation on for every $1 million of assessment, it's $7,613.
All right, so they like cost of construction was roughly $5 million for their building. So even if they got assessed at 10 million, we'd be looking at $70,000 of taxes. Is that kind of correct? Like on a yearly
76,000 on 10 million assessment.
Like a wild ass guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. All right, so should we just move to a vote? And the motion was, say it again, that.
So the motion right now is just whether or not council wants to add this to your agenda to speak about.
Okay, so because we haven't.
Sorry, I feel like we have.
I think we're all in favor of that.
Yeah, and just a reminder that it is unanimous. If one person votes no, then the discussion ends.
Yeah. So all in favor. All right. Here we go.
Okay.
So
sorry. So now any motion that you take on this item, any direction that you want to give, will be based on a regular majority vote.
Councilor Minions.
I'm just gonna make the motion that staff bring back a report on what the implications of putting this, I don't want to say as a priority, because that might not be everyone's viewpoint, but putting this into the queue, what the implications to the airport, to other applications, to resources, if someone can't be hired, et cetera. So all the different avenues.
CAO.
Maybe I can just suggest that it actually is stated as a priority, because to meet the timelines that they want, it can only be done if this is treated not just as a priority, but as a top priority, as the top. Well,
In that motion, can
a
it be
top
that
priority.
what the implications of making it a top priority would be,
Yeah.
not necessarily that the prioritization has
Correct.
been made? Okay, yeah, that
Yeah,
would work.
I'll second that. That's what I was gonna suggest. When is our next
Okay.
meeting? I don't even know.
May
May 5th.
Yeah.
6th.
Okay, so not that long. Okay.
Cinco de Mayo. Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So what is the actual request? Is it around the subdivision of the property?
Well, that goes to, I think, maybe Marvin's point, is that there's kind of two different presentations that we got today. One would be the approval of the subdivision, and two would be issue of the development and building permits.
So why would we need to issue development and building? Oh, okay, development and building permits for the occupant buying the property?
That's correct.
So we're going to work on something that somebody doesn't even own the property yet?
That's correct.
Sounds risky. If this was, the developer's request to move ahead the subdivision of the property so he could sell the land, and there was no industrial involved, how would we feel about putting that in front of the queue?
So
It's not a question.
So we had a
That's
motion
question
though,
to
right?
Council, sorry, everyone was looking at me
Yeah,
in the room.
we
here,
do
so-
have a motion out. Was it seconded?
Yeah, it was seconded.
Yeah, okay, so good, okay.
Yeah, we're in discussion.
I dozed off there for a second.
I just want to know, I just want some real clarity around what we're actually going to ask staff to do, because if it's around if it was, I guess in my mind, if the applicant, and I'll use the applicant as Chris Gage, if the applicant is simply asking us to move ahead his subdivision of his property so he can sell the property, I'm not sure how I would think about that as far as putting it ahead in the queue. And so I think I'd rather be more comfortable with a motion that said staff needs to talk to the potential person developing the potential property that might potentially be sold. There's a lot of ifs in this.
CAO, go ahead.
Yeah, so in the report that we brought back, we would be speaking to both of those. And so this land is caught in a little bit of a catch-22 right now. And Mr. Gage highlighted the fact that there is another encumbrance on it due to a legal decision that had been made in the past. And so that's what makes it it adds complication, because that land cannot be sold until subdivision is granted by the town. So that's why so the process that we have to go through, in which we're dealing with both the landowner and potential developer, couldn't change. It's stuck in that position until we're able to provide subdivision of the land, which can't happen until the bylaws come into place. It's a very complicated parcel. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the developer, like I understand your point in what you're saying, is that we're working with two different groups right now, and the developer hasn't put money into the land yet, and we're going to be working based on their timelines. I guess I'm just trying to highlight that the developer couldn't put money in and purchase that property yet until the subdivision takes place, because the other portion of the land has the airport has some level of legal right to purchase the eastern part of the land. So the developer couldn't purchase the whole part of it, even if they had wanted to.
Yeah, and that's why this piece of land has taken some time over the last, say, year to negotiate through all of that and get their place to where they are today. But also, if someone has an offer on a piece of property, it's pretty standard to come and get your stuff done at town. I know they did that on the Broad Street property and on several others, where you make an offer, you go get your stuff in a row, and then you close on it once you get through the system. So that's not super unusual. What is unusual on this one is the piece on the northeast corner, and that's been a real juggling match to kind of get through. And so to finally be somewhere where they can actually go it's been a long time coming.
Okay, any other questions, comments on that? So all in favor of Councillor Mignon's motion?
Could we read the motion again?
Okay, go ahead.
So the motion would be for staff to provide a report to council on the implications of providing priority processing to the application made by Mr. Gage.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
No, nobody opposed, but I do have notice of motion as well.
Okay. Yes, because we're done with that. So yes, go ahead with
hopefully
with
all
that.
right.
Go ahead with your.
Okay, they're just there's two of them. They're shall I proceed?
Yes, please.
Yeah, there's just bad lag.
Yeah, there's a delay.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. My apologies. My internet is not good today for some reason. So they're just two small advocacy pieces that have come to us from community members and community groups. One from the Comox Youth Climate Council regarding old growth logging, and the others from Mom Stop the Harm regarding the toxic drug supply, which we're all aware has impacted our town in a major way as well. So I'll send that wording to Shelley and Jordan, I suppose, in the next week, and talk about them next week.
Okay, you don't need to. You need the actual notices of motions right. The notice. The actual motions right now.
Yeah, correct. I could. You were cutting out at the end there, so I couldn't quite hear what you were saying.
So we do need the wording of your motion right now, Councillor.
For the notice of motion.
Yeah.
No, you said it right.
Yeah.
Okay, let me read this. So the first one is, just pulling it up here.
And then you can send it to staff as well, just so we got it, but you go ahead and read it first.
I'm sorry, you cut out there.
Yeah, I was just saying, go ahead and read it, but then when you're done, just email. So go ahead and read it, and then when you're done, if you can, just send the wording to Shelley, so that way she does have it there in writing too.
Okay, so the one from the Comox Youth Climate Council is the call for immediate protection of all at-risk old growth forests in BC. So whereas ancient high productivity big tree old growth ecosystems are globally one of the most valuable climate mitigation and resiliency assets in terms of carbon storage, sequestration, protection against wildfires, storage of water, and bank of biodiversity. And whereas of the 2.7% of the original high productivity big tree old growth forests, less than 1% of BC's total current forested area, 75% are still slated to be eliminated through logging. Be it resolved that the town of Comox call the provincial government to immediately defer logging in all high productivity, rare, oldest, and most intact old growth forests as recommended by the Old Growth Strategic Review until all 14 of the panel's recommendations have been implemented, including deferrals in such at-risk old growth forests as the headwaters of Fairy Creek, the Upper Wellbrand Valley, Namit Valley, Eden Grove, Edinburgh Mountain, Upper Siska Valley, East Creek, Plasketch Valley, Nymphish Lake, and the old growth, the inland old growth temperate rainforest, and that the town of Comox formally opposed the logging of at-risk old growth forests, and that the town of Comox call on the government of British Columbia to allocate funding to enact deferrals in an economically just manner in the full spirit of reconciliation and to support the economic transition of the affected First Nations and non-First Nations communities from unsustainable old growth logging for the development of long-term sustainable local economies. And that the following resolution be sent to the Union of BC municipalities as a late submission. And
I hope you didn't have that all written down on
yeah,
a piece of
there's
paper and take a tree itself. Okay, that was number one. So yeah, you're definitely going
You
to
know,
have
great thing
to
about
send that into staff, but we got the gist of it.
you didn't get all that?
And
Yeah,
number two.
You didn't get all that?
Yeah, and number two, please.
It's whereas the toxic drug supply, yep. Whereas the toxic drug supply crisis is one of the largest public health emergencies of our lifetime, with a death of about every 2 hours on average and a death toll of over 16,360 since 2016, January 2016, March 2020. And whereas other countries have significantly reduced drug-related fatalities with reforms such as legal regulation of illicit drugs to ensure safe supply and decriminalization for personal use. And whereas the federal government has indicated it is premature to discuss these measures until there are comprehensive supports for people to get well. And whereas the supports are needed, but measures that save lives are essential if people are to survive and access supports. And whereas the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police has stated that they agree the evidence suggests decriminalization for civil possession as an effective way to reduce the public health and public safety harms associated with substance use. And whereas the toxic drug supply crisis rages, showing few signs of abating, therefore be it resolved that Council request the Government of Canada declare a toxic drug supply crisis a national public health emergency and immediately seek input from the people most affected by this crisis and meet with provinces and territories to develop a comprehensive pan-Canadian overdose action plan, which includes comprehensive supports and full consideration of legal reforms that other countries have implemented to significantly reduce drug-related fatalities and stigma, such as legal regulation of illicit drugs to ensure safe supply of pharmaceutical alternatives to toxic street drugs and decriminalization for personal use.
Could you repeat that? I didn't get it.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for that, Councillor
So
McGowan.
I think on the first one, a very similar motion was brought to the RD. And Maureen, do you remember what that? I know it's been brought to UBCM before, and I think if I remember correctly, Edwin said that they didn't even put it on the agenda for some reason. I can't remember why, but can you remember what?
Probably too long.
What happened? Yeah, because they couldn't read it all. Yeah, I don't know. But can you remember what they said?
Well, I
Maureen?
can hope we can all read it all, because that would be really sad.
The only thing it wasn't from the youth council, I don't believe. Was it? I mean,
No, it wasn't, but it was a very similar.
But,
yeah, it was similar.
but we can discuss that if this motion comes. Yeah. Okay, so we got those two. Thank you very much, Councillor McGowan. So we're going to, we don't have any other further notices to motion. Okay, thanks. Correspondence, we have the CAO of the RD, Russell Dyson, Regional Organics Composting Project Target Amendment Letter of Support.
Move.
Second.
And any questions or comments on that? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Number two, this is a regional grant application to UBCM Strengthening Community Service Program.
Move.
Second.
Any questions, comments on that? All in favor? Great, thank you. And Rob Peterson Live Music Project for Seniors request for $500 in support.
Move receipt.
Okay, do we have a seconder on that?
Second.
Okay, so any questions on this, comments? So I guess normally what we would do is move this to the budget process, although we just finished that up. So we're kind of in a pickle on this one because we don't have any money allocated for it. So council wish to discuss that further, or just move receipt of this? Councillor Swift?
Well, again, this is one that I would consider falls under a grant and aid program, which we don't have. So I believe we should just receive it.
Okay. Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think while it's an admirable program, I think there's no nonprofit supporting it. It's just a group of, great people trying to do great things. But I think I would agree with Councillor Swift that we move to receive.
Okay, great, thank you. So seeing no other hands up. Sorry, go ahead. Councillor McKenna? Sorry, McGowan, did you?
Oh,
you were saying something?
I thought that's what I had moved receipt.
Yeah, okay.
I had moved receipt. Moved
Okay.
for receipt.
Yeah, you're just a little clipped here, so we don't always get everything you say. So all in favor of receipt then? And that's carried. Thank you very much. The late items, we don't have reports. Let's see how fast you can go when we
I'll
do
go
reports
first.
from members of council. Councillor McKenna.
Community Justice Center board meeting. Thank you.
Okay, then we're going to go with McGowan, Bissinger, and Swift.
I took part in the Indigenous training program, the first section of that, which was heartbreaking and informative. Met with Aaron Novak of the Comox Valley Conservation Partnership. Really looking forward to possible collaboration. Food Policy Council Subcommittee of Municipal and Supply. The Stair Senior Center Board meeting. They're so happy that the elevator is coming through. It's awesome. And a Substance Use Committee meeting. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Bissinger and then Swift.
Sure, thanks. Attended the hospital board meeting, and there was a big piece about advocacy and engagement, 2 to 3 times a year, vice chair and chair meeting with BIHA. Attended the solid waste advanced technologies subcommittee as well, and there's a big focus on construction and demolition waste. So there'll be probably something coming out for best practices, policies, education. So that's going to the board at the meeting tomorrow, and then hopefully something comes out of it for the participating municipalities. That's it.
Thanks, Councillor Swift.
I attended the sewer, water, and the regional district meeting. I attended the Indigenous awareness session, the first of 2, and it was excellent. And no meeting, but I would encourage everybody to check out the summer kitchen at the Philberg. It is now open and is getting good reviews.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, we had a RD meeting, which was mostly all areas A, B, and C stuff. And I had an economic review, service review for the Economic Development Society, which we'll talk about in camera.
Okay, and Councillor Minions.
The hospital board meeting, which Alex talked about, and the sewage commission, which was just more on conveyancing. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I had a few things here. Had the island mayors speaking with Minister Osborne and some of the folks from the health department, I guess, the health Ministry of Health. And one of the things that I had mentioned was that a timely notice to businesses would be beneficial. They were quite the businesses were quite set back when they got a 1 o'clock notice on a Monday saying that night they were going to be shut down for 2 weeks, and now until after the May long weekend. And everybody's understanding of that, but they had already put their food orders in, and so brought that up as a concern that will be looked at. I had 2 other health calls. I'll just leave it at that. One with the province, one with the EOC here. Meeting with the BIA, and you'll see that the new banners are out on the light posts in downtown. So that adds to the vibrancy, and summer is coming. Had a CVEDS RD group meeting with some of the stakeholders there. And I talked to a lot of people this weekend in the media about the Bush Party, and hopefully, the young kids there will all come through that okay. And I got my COVID shot on Friday, so had a sore arm for a couple of days. Councillor Grant had his on Saturday, so we're good to go. But that's all I had. And so now we will get a resolution to go in camera.
Second.
All in favor? All right, thank you. So, and staff, this has been a long one. Thank you very much.